Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order March 20th PZBA meeting. Roll call, please, Jen.
Chairman Kempa.
Here.
Commissioner Bashevsky.
Here.
Commissioner Simmons.
Here.
Commissioner DeGraff.
Here.
Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Commissioner Weigel.
Here.
Commissioner Sayward is absent by prior notice. We have a quorum.
Perfect. All right, the first item is to approve the minutes from the, she doesn't agree with the minutes. All right, let's approve the minutes from the February 27th meeting. I did not see anything, any comments from anybody else?
28.
28th?
We need to correct the date of the minutes because it was actually February 28th. It was
Okay.
a typo in the agenda.
Okay. All right, can I please have a motion to approve the February 28th regular meeting minutes?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, we are going, I can go ahead and do that.
Go ahead.
We're going to rearrange the agenda a bit. Since we have an audience, we'd like to bring the first item of communication to the public, and that's the contractor fraud announcement. If we could have Director Peterson give us a briefing, please.
Okay, let me try and get this up on the screen. Jen, can you try and get that on the screen? Patrick, can you move it to the, yes, thank you. Thank you for indulging me on this one. Last year, the city of Prospect Heights got hit with a significant amount of contractor fraud. It was perpetrated by the Irish Gypsies, and it was related to contractor repaving of driveways. They approach you on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, nice weather, come to your house, try and engage you in a conversation, offer you an incredible deal. If you sign now, they don't offer a real contract, and then they show up and just start doing the work without permits. Their claims are you don't need permits because, oh, we're just replacing in kind. You don't need to have them check the base. Or it's like seal coating. We'll put a 1-inch layer of asphalt over your existing driveway, so it's like putting the seal coat on top. You don't need permits. The problem is last year, out of the 12 documented cases we had, they took up almost $500,000 from people in our town. One property, they took $30,000 from an 87-year-old man, filled his drainage ditch, and now it's going to cost him almost another $10,000 to bring it into compliance. And I issued 27 tickets last year for about $30,000 worth of fines, but there were no people because they're non-existent. Everything about them is fraud. This is a repeat of a newsletter article that you will see on the e-news and in the upcoming newsletter. We have subsequently found out there was about another 10 to 15 residents that were taken last year. As we've had an unseasonably warm spring, they're already out. We had 3 properties hit last week. Thank goodness for a concerned citizen who was almost a victim last year, who was checking in on some senior neighbors and friends of theirs. He observed what was going on, came here and intervened. We were able to get to them before any money transferred hand, but 2 of the 3 properties, their driveways were totally ripped out already. Damaging properties, damaging city street. All the trucks, these are the real trucks. The top one on the left is a Dodge Ram, has paving contractors, all kinds of logos on it, says they got bonded, insured. There's not a single reference to a business name, business phone number, email address, and the license plates are out of, I believe this one's out of Virginia. The sales guys were 2 Irish gentlemen. Oh yeah, this truck is out of Massachusetts. That's the dump truck that pulled, or Virginia. The dump truck was from Virginia. The trailer was from Massachusetts. Their laborers were in a truck from Virginia. And the 2 Irish guys that were the salesmen, when they came to pick up their dump truck, were driving trucks with South Carolina plates. Not a single one of them had a valid ID. The 2 Irishmen that were the salesmen and the crew leaders had Canadian IDs, there's no way for me to trace or confirm they really exist. We did issue citations, but they have failed to pay, they have failed to get permits, they're gone. And this is an important issue because they prey on elderly, they prey on people, on their niceness and generosity. The only way that you can prevent it is to say no. And I know it can be hard. They're very friendly, they're very convincing. They've been trained how to sail in all the other counters that are out there. But at the end of the day, you will have, the one property that they took out, they were going to pour asphalt over black dirt. No stone base, no compaction, nothing. They were almost ready to take $27,000 from that couple for a non-code compliant condition. This is a serious issue. It wastes a lot of staff time. And the easiest thing to do is tell them, I do not take unsolicited offers, period. If I didn't call you, please leave my property, okay? If you see signs such as paperwork, okay, the paperwork, I don't have a copy of it here because it's got some information I can't share, but the address is from the south side of Chicago. If you're pouring asphalt, why aren't you up here? A local asphalt company, have a local office. When you search the business address, it takes you to a vacant truck yard on South Ashland on the south side of the city. Everything looks professional. You go to their website, looks good. They've got all kinds of testimonials. But last year's crews had 3 different contractor names, and all 3 of them had the exact same pictures on the websites. It was all the same crew, and their offices don't exist. You can't get service, and you'll never get a warranty. You'll never get that. And at the end of the day, you'll be stuck with a project that is not code compliant, will fail, and will end up, at the end of the day, the way the ordinances are written, because the work was done without permits, you as the homeowners are ultimately responsible for hiring fraudulent contractors and doing work without a permit. We don't want to penalize you or fine you, but when you cause damage to city streets, because of that action, we have no choice. It's not that we want to do it, but we have to. And it's not like I want to charge the senior citizen that got hit last year, but when they filled our drainage ditch and it's going to cost us $10,000 to fix their crime because he wanted to do work without getting a permit, we can't foot that bill. That's going to come back on the homeowners. But these here are tips that are listed in the fraud protection from the Attorney General's office. We have lists of registered, licensed, bonded, reputable contractors here. Give us a call if you're looking to do a job. We'll give you 5 or 6 people to call. That's one of the things we do. We do inspections to make sure at certain points you're getting what you're paying for. And should there be a problem, because they're bonded and insured, if they fail to work with you, we can go after them to try and make sure they do it correctly. 3 years ago, I got almost $23,000 back for 2 women that a contractor took their money and split. But because he had an active, valid bond on file, we were able to make them whole. We're not here to cause problems or do those things, but we're kind of like your quality control to help you when you can. There are links in here, one's to the Better Business Bureau's article. Last year, this was the #1 fraud scam in the Chicagoland area. The Better Business Bureau isn't going to run an article this year because that was last year's news. They're on to the next thing. So they're going to continue to prey on people, and there's no real public outcry now. And then the Attorney General's office is the other spot you can call if you are afraid that you're getting taken. All contracts, consumer protection rights under the Attorney General for permit construction type work, anything over the value of $1,000, the contractor is supposed to give you a consumer rights bulletin. You have a 3-day right of refusal. You have the right to your money back. They can't ask for you to pay in full. Those are all warning signs. Last year, one guy they went with him to the bank and he had a cashier's check made out to the paving supplier because the Irish guys owed the paver. Well, when we tried to put charges on the paving guy, he goes, he bought my asphalt. I didn't do the work. He had to pay for the asphalt. So there was no way to help that individual out. So thank you for letting me indulge you, but be aware, look around your neighborhoods. See, and some of you they hit south of Camp McDonald, between Camp McDonald and Euclid, between Elmhurst and Wheeling Road 2 weeks ago. There were 3 families that got hit in there, and I know of 4 others that were supposed to get work done by them. But it's happened all over the city last year, and it's going to continue to be there. And without people being diligent, without that one neighbor seeing the signs and speaking up, there would have been a lot of people taken. And the only way to get them out of town is to say no. Say no. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
I'll just add that it actually did happen to me as well, probably 4 weeks ago, on a nice Saturday afternoon. Gentleman came over, offered services, and I knew, because I sit here every month, so I asked him to leave. But as Director Peterson says, it's not that easy. They're very nice, nice Irish accent, and we could almost drink Guinness together, but luckily I knew and I refused. So be a smart consumer.
And Dan?
Yeah.
He was at my house on Saturday. I remember this, you telling us this last year. I did not remember you saying he was Irish. So he's in a white truck, a white pickup truck, not that truck. It had nothing on it.
Yep.
And he pulled up and he said, and of course I know because when we talked, I didn't know about the Irish part, so he threw me off a little bit. And he looked at it in 3 seconds. He said, $12,500. I'll do it for $8,500. I go, you didn't even measure anything. He goes, I've been doing this a long time. And then I said, you got to make sure you get permits, in this town. I'll take care of all the permits. And he said, I'll put the invoice in your box. And I said, by the way, I don't even think there's asphalt yet. He goes, there's asphalt. So I called the asphalt company. They're not open yet. He never put the invoice in my box. He never let me a car. So he's out there.
And this year, it's Tony Young's Paving and Masonry. Last year, the crew stole a business ID from a legitimate paving contractor in St. Charles and just added and masonry to the end of his name, and he was trying to sue them for business fraud. Again, had no luck. We've had, and last year they hit us, Arlington Heights, Wheeling, Palatine, Rolling Meadows, Streamwood, Carroll Stream, Round Lake Beach, and a couple of others. And like I said, I estimate they took over $500,000 out of our town that I can document. And if they're getting that much cash, that's why they do it. And they know they're ghosts in the wind, and they know that there's no way for us to pin them down. All we can do is try and get rid of them. Yes.
Is that something we should be calling the police if we see them in our neighborhoods?
If the best thing to do is if they aren't leaving and they're hassling you, you do that, report it as a suspicious vehicle. Why would a guy in a pickup without estate plates be going door to door?
Yeah, there was actually someone at my house today. I didn't answer the door.
They're out there. And myself, Andrew, Gonzalo, we only have the 3 on the street, and I'm not in the street that much. I'm in the office. Our police are doing police work as best they can, so they're not seeing. Our public works guys are looking, but it's up to you and to tell your neighbors, spread the word. This is coming out in the newsletter again in the next couple of weeks. When the printed, it's going on the e-news. If you guys want these links, I'll send them to you for people. But the biggest thing is to get the message out to your friends and neighbors that they're out there and they're not your friend. They're there to take your money. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, on to the next item. We have an item of old business, which is PCBA case number 24-01 PC. We never closed it, so we don't have to, do we need a motion to
Well,
continue?
it was a public meeting for fact-finding, and tonight's going to be a follow-up report. There's no action being proposed. It's just to hear the report from me, and I will be seeking direction from the ZBA on the next steps, which I'll cover here in a minute, but we don't actually have to open it up. It's
Okay.
a public, it's just a
So
public.
it's a continuation of what we started back in January. We've had a bunch of people, a lot of people comment on the issue of keeping backyard chickens. We've also received written notices from other residents that did not speak at that meeting with their comments. And the direction was for the city, mainly Director Peterson, to prepare a report based on additional research and the comments that were received. And so I'm assuming you are going to summarize that report for us.
Yes.
Following the summary, if there are any questions from the public, you are more than welcome to ask any of the questions regarding the points that are being brought up today.
First of all, I want to thank all the public who is here on January 24th. Usually at our meetings, we don't have an audience. So to see people who are wanting to participate in an issue is why we do what we do, and that's why we have these forums. So both sides of the issue need to have that opportunity, and it's the only way that we can come to reasonable results, and that's what we're meant to have, as a discussion. We may not be on the same size, but we have to agree to be respectful of everybody and try and address those so everybody can hopefully benefit at the end of the day. With that, a brief history. Chickens have always been in the city of Prospect Heights, and this dates back to, yes, please, just to give you a little background. So this is the current Cook County ordinance which governed all of Prospect Heights prior to Prospect Heights was a city. Okay, there's one sentence in the whole county code that talks about fowl. And all it says is enclosures should be suitable for the confinement of such animals. So for as long as Prospect Heights was here, that's what the rule was. Well, when the city established in 1976 and 1977, not knowing any better, okay, we'll take this position. They didn't added it into their animal control ordinance, okay? The only reference in there is then when we talk about the zoning code, the next one, please, John, is in lot coverage, okay? And they define accessory building. And this is the same definition that's been on the book since 1977. And that is that these, under the accessory buildings, these are the structures that are defined as accessory buildings. They're controlled by size, location, and everything else by the zoning code. However, I don't know why, and I'm not going to try and assume, but things as barns, that's easy. Screen structures, dog or animal house or kennel. What is a chicken coop? It's an animal house, right? They even talk about dog runs are not counted towards the lot area coverage. And when we start looking at impervious surface, that's the next section down. Because people didn't have to get a permit for the chickens, then they start building their structures, not realizing they don't need, they don't need to get a permit for approval. Okay, fast forward, we get people that have a number of chickens, have this. Then when we do get a complaint, it's usually, and I've stated this before, we don't get a ton of them. We don't get a lot, but the ones we get are usually generated because of a noise complaint. And that's typically because of the roosters. We go out there, the police have a hard time enforcing it because a lot of times they're doing other work. When they come out there, they don't hear it, so they can't address it. We get a call later in the day, we go out there, we can't address the noise issue, but yet it's a disruptive issue to the community, the neighbors, the others in the community. And also too, those structures are limited in size and number in the zoning code, always have. So if you were here in 1977, you should have been following this, but over time, for whatever reason, they weren't applied for or approved. So that's one of the areas that we need in the justification for, I'll be talking about registration and inspections later on. It's not to inspect your coops for health and sanitation, that's the Department of Ag. We're looking at locations on the property of the structure, so they're not impactful to others. We'll get into that side of it. So it's getting back to looking at the structures as they are and always have been looked at, and making sure that we're having compliant properties is what the goal is. In January, it was a very passionate and emotional night, and people spoke very specifically and with just statements. However, it was a very one-sided debate. I did hear after from some folks that were here, but they felt like it was not a place where they could give their opinion without feeling the potential of being attacked. So we have to remember that there are others that don't have the same feeling, okay? And those emails, I've read some, we pass them out. So we have to take account into all the residents on both sides of the issues. So as I went forward, one of the things that I wanted to do is make sure that, because I heard you, as PZBA did, you guys want to keep your chickens. You do it for various reasons, okay? And that, egg production is probably the number one reason that we heard. Secondary, there was some other food related where your stuff comes from. So we heard that. We heard the discussion about roosters. We heard the discussion about cleanliness and sanitation. So we took all that. So tonight's not a time to redo that. It's just to talk about some things moving forward. So over the last 2 months, I've spent a lot of time on the phone, on the websites, trying to identify best practices, standards established by the U.S. Department of Agriculture for residential chicken keeping, the Illinois Department of Agriculture, the University of Illinois Extension Campus, the 4-H, and other agencies that deal with this issue. There is no standardized set of rules that I could find for backyard chicken keeping. Okay, there's no best practices. There's some various agencies, and most of them deal with production farming. Most of them deal with egg production. Most of them deal with sanitation, but there's very little information out there. And so what we have to do then is I turn then to what are the best practices in the area in terms of other municipalities, similar in size, not size, similar in makeup, not makeup, to try and determine where people are going. I showed a slide of a very quick one afternoon search I did before last meeting. I've spent a lot of time this time, and I've surveyed 23 municipality government agencies in the Chicagoland area. And I did the Chicagoland Metro because Prospect Heights is unique, but other towns you get a little further out are not. And just for everybody to know, this information on this screen is on the city's code on the city's website too. So you can get a better picture off the computer than you can your phone. But in that, I looked at towns of similar populations, both urban, which we are, suburban, and then collar communities outside the range, just to see where we are. Additionally, I looked at counties, because when we look up in the governmental structures, you have the state government is the highest power of state in the state. Counties are the second highest power in terms of rules and regulating authority, then home rule communities, then non-home rule communities, which we are a non-home rule community. The non-home rule communities are a little more lenient on the chicken issue. But what I found was that of the 23 municipalities, Cook County is the only one that approves it with no guidelines. Okay, so that's where we started from. Approves it with no guidelines. The other two counties that are close is Lake County, Illinois, which is still has a lot of farmland, has a lot of areas. And let me pull up the Lake County slide, please. And we'll get back to that. Yep. So Lake County, Illinois that's fine. This is their printed guideline, one of their educational pieces. And what I discovered in this is that almost everybody regulates the number of animals by lot size. And even Lake County, Illinois, the unincorporated area, not the local municipalities, because that's governed by the local municipalities, they determined, and they have access to the Lake County Health Department, they've got the Lake County Farm Bureau, they got other things, that a lot with 20,000 square feet can have a maximum of eight chickens, 8 hens, because they also prohibit roosters. And so then I go to Will County, because theirs was easy to find. Will County, I'm sorry about the size here. Will County, again, allows chickens. You have to have a 12,500 square foot minimum lot size, and you have to have one chicken per 2,500 square feet of lot area. They also prohibit all other fowl and poultry, and they prohibit roosters. So then I go through the municipalities, and what you'll see throughout all what I found is that they all determine the limit on number of birds by lot size. Okay, yes.
Can I ask a brief question? To start out the last meeting on this topic.
Can you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean
And
to
of
totally
course,
interrupt, but I want
state your name for the record.
Randall Brace, 300 Linden Road North.
Yep.
What's the problem statement we're trying to solve?
No, just, it's all part of the whole research, and I'll get to the problem
I
statement.
agree, but if we're attempting to solve problems instead of shopping for regulations, we should state what the problem is and how your proposals are going to address the stated problems.
Stated problem, noise, odors, number of chickens.
Number of
free range.
chickens was not on the last time. It was nuisance, like neighbor disturbance, zoning. Those were what we started with. Are we growing them?
Odor and upkeep was part of the number of chickens, and that was one of the nuisance, and I identified that as a lower category when we got our calls. It was roosters, annoyance, lack of zoning, and the lack of maintenance and free ranging of the number of chickens, because there was, and I did state at that meeting that there was property that had in excess of 20 chickens that were running around free range, okay, uncontrolled. That was stated. So all part of this is looking at how these other municipality ordinances were established, okay? So we took.
Can I add one thing that you also stated at the last meeting, is that we didn't have enough enforcement people to enforce the rules we already
But-
had. Right?
but-
Was that not one of the statements that we made? That we have the nuisance law that
We-
was
no,
applied,
we-
that people went to
no.
investigate, but we don't have enough
Okay,
people
so
to generally apply
let him
that.
get through his whole spiel
You'll have
before we
chances
just keep
to-
him in order,
Okay,
because if we do
okay.
this, let him get through his whole spiel.
Logan,
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And so, went through, lot sizes. I'll be making a recommendation a little later about a methodology to determine the number of chickens, okay, that will be allowed. And because as I stated last time, half-acre lots are different than what the majority of these towns are in terms of lot sizes. So I'm trying to lay the groundwork of how I'm getting to what I found in the research, because the ZBA asked me to perform more research to come back with, so that an educated and basis could be put together to move this forward. All of them except for Cook County prohibited roosters, 22 out of the 23. And when I talked to some of the code officials from those towns, it was mainly to address the noise complaints and the quality of life for neighbors in the summertime who have their windows open and are awakened at 4 o'clock in the morning. And the complaints that were filed and then the same issues came through is, unless the police hear it, unless I hear it, I can't write the city cannot write a ticket, okay? Then the onus becomes on the neighbor to sign an affidavit and file charges against their neighbor. And in our town, that's not what I heard from the written emails I got in the phone survey I did, and I'll get to the phone stuff, that people do not want to have us write citations against their neighbors. Secondly, most municipalities restrict the height of that. Well, our zoning code already deals with that. I don't have a problem with that. Runs range anywhere from 50 square feet to 100 square feet. Our ordinance already allows up to 200 square feet for anything, so that's dealt with. I don't have to deal with that. 3 of the municipalities limited the number of properties in their town that could have chickens to 25, 25, and 20. We're not proposing that. Or we won't propose that. It's, we don't see that, but some towns think only a small percentage of properties deserve to have chickens. I don't think that's our role in this. Registration, licensing, and building permits and zoning permits and approvals were required in all of the communities. And that's going to be, and some of the things that we've observed that are out there, I think if people would have got the proper permits, wouldn't have some of the conditions that are out there. That's my observation. And then we did see quite a few applications and educational materials, and one of the outcomes of this will be that the department will be producing educational handouts, kind of like Lake County. We'll do lot diagrams that show how you can meet the zoning code on a standard lot or a corner lot or that, because we have a lot of unique lots in our town, okay? And that's kind of the beauty of our town. The Illinois Department of Agriculture, like I said, had no help. They're mainly just want people to register their property so they could track incidences of disease and health issues. Their main target is production farms. The Illinois Extension Camp, University of Illinois, did not return my calls. I consulted with the city's zoning consultant, because this is what they do for a living, and they provided some other ordinances from other towns that were incorporated in this, and based on their 50 years of experience as an entity, the clients they've worked with in reviewing their ordinances that allowed it all prohibited roosters for the noise complaints nuisance issue. Again, the Village of Woodridge is going through this process right now, and I will be posting a copy of their telephone or Google survey online. Resident interviews. I had phone conversations with a number of people that were in support of chickens that were at the last meeting, who offered to volunteer to answer some questions. And I also spoke with some of those that did not speak publicly, but were here, and then also that submitted written to understand their positions. of those, the people in opposition to keeping chickens in the backyards, we're not in opposition to having chickens. Okay, every single one of them, the people I talked to, and the majority of the emails was in support of that. They just didn't want to have the disruption in their lives. And we've talked about that a lot.
Excuse me, did they clarify what disruption?
4 AM, and they're not going to call the police because the police have better things to do. That's a direct quote.
So noise,
Noise.
okay.
Yeah,
I was just
that's,
wondering which-
and we've had quite a few of them that are that have stated in their phone conversation and a couple emails that when you have to clean your coops, you have to do that. However, it cannot be a pleasant time for a little bit for odors, okay? And it comes with the territory. However, maybe when the neighbors are having a party is not the best time to clean your coops. Okay, again, we can't control that. I'm not doing it, but maybe education would be the best avenue. Can I please get through this and you'll have your chance to ask me questions?
Question, because you keep bringing up the rooster thing. Can you tell me how many complaints you've received in the last year of roosters?
I will tell you, here's what the issue is. When I spoke to the people in Reddit, I'm not going to call the police at 4 AM. When the police do get calls, we don't get, from the building department, we don't get an actual report because they go and they want his case not confirmed because they don't hear it. So therefore, it's not a case.
Yeah. No, I'm just
In our
wondering
department,
how many complaints you think you've got in the last year because of actual roosters?
Well, how many individual
All
complaints?
right, you guys, we can't,
You know,
questions right now.
So let me get through because we're going to get sidetracked. You'll have your chance to do this because we had our chance, you asked me similar questions a while ago, but this is coming through and this is what I'm being told in summarizing information from other towns. I can't speak to how other towns, what they have. What I am going to do is post the information from the Village of Woodridge, which from their Google survey, so you can kind of see what they've done. Unless they tell me to do otherwise, we weren't planning to do that because I think we have a way to solve the problem and get to a point where everybody can be happy. You may not be totally happy, but everybody can live with, I think, on both sides of the question. The other one was the concern that was brought up, and this is something we can deal because selling of eggs and birds is prohibited in our code anyway. But again, we don't know it's illegal unless someone tells us, and again, enforcement. Supporting comments. And I appreciate the comments that came in, and some more comments have come in after the discussions. The question I asked was, would you be opposed to registering licensing properties that want to keep chickens? Okay, because at the end of the day, the other questions understood where you were coming from. Your responses were not opposed, okay, as long as it was reasonable and not punitive, okay. I will tell you, one of the opposition said that you should register every bird like he has to register every one of his dogs. That's not realistic, okay? But, and then also too, having the registration and doing the inspection may eliminate some of the other issues that have been complaint causers. One of the respondents said it should be only a one-time registration. However, I will tell you my 30-year experience has been, once I'm there and I leave, people tend to change behaviors again. Okay, and it's just, and it's not a punitive, it's not going to be that, it's just to check on a regular basis. Make sure it's for inspection for compliance with zoning, and that's the whole purpose of this, okay? All researched ordinances appear to establish limitations based on lot size, setbacks, neighboring properties, approximately 1 chicken per 1,000 square feet. As you can see by what I showed you tonight, that's being generous. Most of the other ones were even more restrictive. In Prospect Heights, that would be approximately 20 per lot. Would this be reasonable limit for Prospect Heights? That seemed, one of the respondents said it would seem reasonable, however, there should be a graduated scale for larger lots, because we do have 3/4 acre lots and 1 acre lots, kind of similar to what Lake County, I showed you that example from Lake County. One of the respondents said there should be no limitations, which is what we had heard in January. Another one, and again, 20 was reasonable, there should be higher allowances, they thought, for meat production chickens. Again, that's an avenue we didn't even discuss and may need more research, but it was a good point raised by that. The question is even that most of the, our rules, the health code under Cook County, you're not supposed to do slaughtering, but I'm not out there looking, and most of the time, people who are doing it for meat have the right, do it for their own personal usage, okay, from what I've read.
You can also take them to a processing facility.
Yeah, so again, those are options, but that was something that we didn't even talk about Monday night, so I want to make sure to raise that. The question came up, does this also include ducks, geese, and turkeys? Right now, that's up to debate, okay? Most of the towns that I surveyed don't allow it. My personal experience where I live in rural, unincorporated McHenry County is domestic ducks and geese are allowed, and domestic turkeys are allowed. So that can be an issue. I have the problem with both wild and domestic in the same area, and the domestic turkeys do respond. Okay, and that's just a personal annotation, personal experience note, not from anything. So that's a question that still is to be determined.
I'm sorry, did you say allowed or are allowed?
R-A-R-E-L-O-U-D.
Loud, okay.
No.
Yeah, I thought you said allowed.
No, are very
They're
loud.
very loud, got it.
They're noisy.
We've raised ducks for years in our backyard in Prospect Heights. They weren't loud. No one ever complained.
Again, I can't go back to what people did or did not complain about in the past, but I'm going for what was brought up in the discussion right now. Should there be restrictions on roosters? All respondents said that roosters should be allowed. 1 rooster per lot is reasonable. Properties with more than 1 should be grandfathered. So the question came up is, if you have a property that's not in compliance, how do we get it to a point of compliance? And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So that's a question that came up in the discussions. If there are complaints, the owner should be allowed to try a crow collar, limiting crowing. That's the comment that we heard, okay? In summary, the responses support on both sides, the opposition and in favor of, support the registration licensing of properties for owners wanting to keep chickens. It appears that we have a methodology to determine a reasonable number of chickens allowed per lot, okay? There's going to be a couple questions. One is the question of keeping roosters. There's just opposite positions. And then at the end of the day, now the other question that came up was meat production, ducks and geese, and then the question that comes up to mind that wasn't addressed is, if you have a rooster that crows, you try another method and it's still disruptive, then what? Is it a $750 ticket, which is what our ordinance says, or how to do that? So that's, that's going to be a question that has to be answered. I don't know the answer to that right now. I can tell you that overall, all of the people in opposition, except for one, that was a written comment, don't think having chickens is bad. They think there's a place for them in Prospect Heights. It's just making sure that they have a quality of life and they're not disturbed. And that's the big issue that I heard. So after going through this, and I stated this, I don't believe there is a problem with having property owners register their properties in the R1 district, okay? That way there, we know how many properties there are. Right now, we're guesstimating between 50 and 75, okay? Which is based on field surveys and just seeing things when we're out and about. Owners, that registration should be renewed annually. Part of that renewal is just to verify compliance with zoning. And then also to make sure that any new people, their operations haven't changed in terms of, are they still following their cleaning plans, just to make sure how to go forward with that. We would like to see the registration, it's free with the Department of Agriculture, it's an online registration, beekeepers have to do it, it's just something that, because we do have one stretch, I know one stretch of town, there are 5 properties that all have chickens in a row. So basically, when you add it up, that's a pretty large flock for a community in a row, from what I've found in my talking to other code officials. Coops runs are accessory structures and should be, and shall be subject to the building and zoning regulations of the code. How I would see this, any new person wanting a chicken would have to get their permits first before they go and buy the chickens. Okay, that way they can start fresh. They know what the rules are, they know how to go. The question's gonna be coming up is those that already have it, a length of time for compliance, because and I've checked this with the attorney, based on that it was always supposed to have permits, but they never did, doesn't make them legal non-conforming, it just makes them non-conforming, and the property still should be, those accessory structures do need to be brought into zoning compliance. We're not here to penalize, we're not here to do this, it's just what type of a time frame and plan can be discussed, and I don't know what that number is. Existing properties, again, that was the last one. Some of the information that I read from other municipalities that enacted these ordinances due to the spike in backyard chicken keeping due to COVID, gave properties 1 year to bring zoning compliance. And from an enforcement standpoint, anything longer than 1 year, it never happens. Okay, we've seen it with building construction. I've got houses that I'm trying to get finished. And then, in conclusion, my staff's conclusion is, not mine, staff's conclusion is keeping chickens is an appropriate use for the property. I believe we have room to address certain components that I think will make it better for all parties going forward, okay? And I'd be looking for direction from the ZBA tonight, because the next step is to draft language of an ordinance. And so everybody here understands how that works, is if there's zoning code changes, that's called a text amendment. And all text amendments in the zoning code have to go through a public hearing process where that draft language is presented. Testimony is given why it's there by the staff or whoever's proposing that language. And then there's time for questions, cross-examination, and the public to have their say. So this is nowhere close to being done, okay? There will be an announcement. We'll put it on the e-news of when that language will be up for consideration. Then a recommendation will be made by this body, and this is just a recommending body, the ZBA members, and then it'll have a first reading, second reading in front of the city council. So there's the potential for at least 3 more opportunities for the public to have involvement in the process. So I'm looking for some direction and concurrence from the ZBA to start the drafting of changes, but one of the things that we need to, a couple things that obviously came out and may need more information, but registrations, number of
Fence.
hens, the prohibition of roosters question, and then,
Meat-producing-
and what?
Meat-producing birds.
And then the, you know, meat production, should there be allowances if a person registers their property for meat production? What we found out in the research is that sometimes you can only buy them in 50, 100 bird lots for meat production. I'm not sure, again,
I
that was.
can answer a lot of those questions at the end.
Okay, yeah, that would be, and that's where input, that's why I'm bringing this forward.
And then coop subject to zoning code.
Yeah. So, and that's where, you know, again, we're not here to take chickens away, it's just figuring out a way where everybody can live well together. So, that being said, Chairman, you
Yeah,
guys have
if-
any questions for me?
So I think we would welcome questions or comments regarding the report from the public. If you have something to add to what the director discussed, there will be now the time to do it, and then we can discuss some more.
Sorry to run right up, but we might have to leave pretty soon.
Understood.
Michael Cormanek, 5 Alton Road. And my question is, based on the report and based on the discussion last time, I'm still not real clear on what ordinance is not on the books right now that would cover chickens. Like what problem or what nuisance or what issue do chickens present that wouldn't already be covered under an ordinance that is currently on the books?
There's two of them that come right out. First of all, I cannot enforce the noise ordinance. It's impossible for me to do the noise
Could
ordinance.
I stop you there? Because I'm not asking what
No,
you can
it-
enforce and what you can't. That, I understand resources are limited, but what I'm saying is, if you had unlimited resources, and then there is an ordinance on the books currently that covers noise and covers nuisance, correct?
Under the animal control
Yeah.
side, which is
Yes.
the police enforcement side of the equation.
I
And
understand that, but what I'm saying is it's not like there isn't a recourse for people. I'm wondering if we don't have resources to enforce the ordinances we already have on the books, what is passing more ordinances going to do other than drain the resources more? I think the issue that I would suggest would be we find a way to get resources so that the current ordinances that cover everything that chickens would present could be enforced.
Are you talking about chickens or roosters? Just-
I'm talking about chickens and roosters and ducks and geese and cassowaries
So,
and quail.
Hey, listen, to answer your question, and while I understand the argument where you have something in place for roosters and noise, two things is, one, there's no question roosters make noise all day
As do
or in the
dogs,
morning.
As do dogs.
Not all dogs. For such, I have
Not
two
all
dogs that are quiet as
roosters-
that.
Not all roosters either.
90%.
No.
How many percent? Okay, how many percent of
No, see,
roosters?
This is where we're just, right
So-
now, we're just speculating. and
Right,
I
so
would rather
that's,
just get the
listen,
research done.
we're trying to educate
But
ourselves
what
too.
I'm saying is if there's a noise problem with roosters, like there's a noise problem with leaf blowers or a noise problem with dogs, if it's a noise problem, we have something on the
Okay,
books
so
to
let
do
me,
something about
since you
that.
brought up leaf blowers, let's say leaf blowers in general create enough nuisance where police are getting called enough where we know it's a problem.
Yeah.
Guess what the city's gonna do? You're not allowed, leaf blowers are no longer allowed.
Highland Park prohibits all leaf blowers.
So that's what they
That's
do.
where we're
They
headed
don't
when
put
we
it,
start
No.
putting
okay, but your
ordinances
point
on the
is,
books.
your point on the leaf blowers.
Yes.
If we know leaf blowers are gonna cause an issue, guess
Yes.
what the city does? Well, let's not make the noise ordinance the solution. Eliminate leaf blowers is the
That's-
solution.
Right.
Okay, so we know a problem is going to exist. Eliminate the problem. Don't come up with a solution by trying to regulate the problem. Just eliminate the problem.
Wait,
That's
so
the
you're saying
that's
the
your.
ordinance shouldn't be on the books?
No, that is one has nothing to do with the other.
I know you're saying, I know what you're getting at, but.
So the ordinance
we allow
covers- the
we
ordinance-
allow leaf blowers here, correct?
You brought up leaf blowers.
I did.
Okay, so
And we allow leaf
I'm-
blowers.
yes, we do.
We allow dogs.
Correct.
We allow big trucks with no mufflers.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, okay, until somebody reports
But my
it, we
point to
do.
you is, you have to understand, we're trying to not have to regulate a problem by eliminating a problem if there is one.
So you're
let us,
saying that we shouldn't have leaf blowers because they cause noise?
you said that.
I did, because I'm using that as an example.
If
If you're saying that we shouldn't have ordinances on the books and enforce them because we should eliminate the problem, then we're gonna have to get rid of babies, we're gonna have to get rid of trucks, we're gonna have to get rid of leaf blowers, we're gonna have to get rid of chickens, dogs.
Okay, so
If you're-
I have a quick question for you.
Yes, uh-huh.
If you have chickens and you have a rooster.
Yes.
And your rooster happens to be noisy.
Yes.
And your neighbor comes over and asks you, listen, your rooster, I
Yes.
can't sleep
Yes.
at 4 o'clock in the morning. What do you do?
I would get one of those collars that you can get to prevent them from crowing. If that doesn't work, I would try to rehome the rooster. And if that doesn't work, I would have the rooster culled.
Okay, and if the same thing happens to a, chicken owner that is not as open as you are, what is the city supposed to do?
Find them. Find them.
How? How? How?
The neighbor follows the rules like everybody else needs to follow the rules. The neighbor reports it to the police, and the
Yeah.
police come out and they say, yes, this chicken is a nuisance.
So
It's a nuisance chicken.
if that solution worked, we wouldn't be here today. If that solution worked, we wouldn't be here today.
So-
You understand that? If that was working, we wouldn't be having this
Why
conversation
isn't
today.
it working?
Because he's explaining this to you over and over again. By the time the
Well,
police
please
get
humor
out,
me, I'm
okay?
slow.
Okay,
So by the time the police come out,
We can record, if there's complaints and nuisances, it can be recorded and shown.
okay, so
to
let me
administration.
kind of put everyone's mind at ease a little. And I might be speaking out of turn, Montez. We've had a similar meeting about, and I don't know who was part of this, 2 years ago. We had a big meeting about people advertising on their cars for signs.
commercial trucks.
Commercial trucks. It was a huge meeting, probably as big as this one. And people are upset. Look, this is my company truck. I got to leave it out front. I rely on my business. I don't have another place to park it. Everyone is opposition. Well, it got passed where you're not allowed to have
Certain.
advertisement on your trucks.
And-
Okay? Guess what? If you drive through this town right now, you're gonna see it. Do you know why you still see it? Because no one's complaining about it. But now we've given an opportunity for someone to complain about it. So if you do happen to have outside, maybe you live in the corner of town where a rooster, and I'm not saying you should, just to get that out, don't piss off your neighbors. But right now, we don't have anything in place to enforce this. And we have neighbors, and you want to be good neighbors.
We have a noise ordinance.
un-
in
It's not
place.
Can-
working.
You
I'm
have.
sorry that the ordinance
Hold on.
isn't working.
Hold
You're
on a
gonna pass
second.
another ordinance that won't work either?
Hold on.
People need to do what they're supposed to do. They need to call the police. The police need to come out and hear it and find them.
The issue has come in, and this is testimony that I heard from people I talked to and read about the issue, is they don't want to call the police over a rooster crowing at 4 a.m. because they believe the police should be out there patrolling for other public safety, not handling noise nuisances. That's a comment from one of the residents.
All right, do the police feel that way?
When the police go out there and they're standing there waiting for a rooster to crow and they have to leave because of a call, it's still an undocumented, not provable violation. They will not correct the issue.
If I were to ask the police, would you rather I didn't call in this noise ordinance that is driving me nuts and it's getting me where I'm going to throttle my neighbor because at 4 in the morning? Should I not call that
That's-
because you got better things to do?
It's
Or are they going
not-
to say, no, you shouldn't call us for that?
The issue comes down that, A, in the civil citation world, which is what this is, local ordinance, they have to witness the event to do that. And if they're on another call, and usually the police, and I will tell you, the police are great in our town.
I know they are.
They want to tell you, hey, do something with your rooster so it doesn't crow, so we don't have to be back.
Right.
Okay, if everybody did what they were supposed to do with that rooster, we wouldn't be here because of the calls. Secondly, folks, we have to remember, this is an R1 residential urban metro community, okay? And R1 zoning is for residential. Neil was right on a lot of things, but the whole matter came down to is people were converting their residential properties into commercial properties. We do not have on our zoning map an Ag 1 zoning. It was never meant to be agriculture. It's R1 residential, and that means 100%, the 3,800 single-family residences should have the same ability to have peace, quiet, as much as people can have chickens, okay? But the one should not negatively impact the other.
I guess if we could get back to my original question, and then I'll stop talking. My original question was, what do chickens cause that wouldn't be covered under an ordinance that already is on the book?
And I've explained it's
You've
the
explained to me
enforcement,
the
it's,
ordinances don't work.
and so therefore, cities have the
You're
right
gonna pass
to,
another ordinance?
if the problem
You're
is
gonna let
not
them talk?
solvable through
Like-
the other
You gonna let me
methods.
talk?
You're disrupting him.
Are you his spokesperson? Are you his bodyguard? Why don't you quiet down?
Excuse me.
Well, sir,
You're done.
This is not order.
Yeah.
That's not, we're all.
we've covered,
Yeah, well, I don't appreciate being talked to like I'm not worthy of being, of standing up here.
You've done that 3 times with Mr. Peterson, just to let you know. Let him, 3 times you've interrupted him. He's trying to talk to you, and you over-talked him 3 times. So if you want to be civil, be civil. But we're not going to run this where you're going to be talking over Mr. Peterson or any of us. And you've done it 3 times.
Are you done?
Yes.
Can I talk? Now, getting back to the answer that you were given before we were interrupted, please?
The issue comes down to if there's, cities have the right, under the zoning law of the state of Illinois, by the state constitution, to regulate rules that, and if there's a situation that is unsolvable and a solution to solve the issue is present, they have the right to change the laws.
Okay,
That's,
so,
and so the issue that has come in, and granted, on the 24th, it was 100% their side, but there are other people that have talked about the obnoxiousness of their neighbors. Their neighbors who promise never to have roosters, when they get it, when they talk to them, don't get rid of the roosters. I can't go and say, because our ordinance doesn't say you can't have roosters, and if they're not crowing, I can't force them to get rid of the rooster. But the problem still exists. So, okay, that's an example, a finite example of what some of the issues. And there's, when I did the calculation, if there's 75 properties that own chickens, that's less than 2% of the city's residential population. Okay, there's less than 100 residents, there's 3,800 other single-family homes that, I've read, that don't want to bother the neighbors, they don't want to disrupt the peace, but they would like to have some peace and quiet in the properties that they want to enjoy outdoors, whether it's the noise, numbers, or other squawking. And they don't call, but yet it got to a point where someone did because the solution wasn't being solved, or the issue wasn't being solved. So we're here trying to figure out what that is. That's what the city council assigned us to do.
if I could talk then, just to sum up, I just want to make sure I understood the answer to my question is, the current ordinance doesn't seem to work in the case of chickens. So this is a discussion to fine tune or to add
No.
something?
We're looking to possibly amend, and like I said before, we're not proposing getting rid of chickens, okay? Staff, everybody believes that chickens are a viable use of our properties because we have large, half-acre minimum, residential, single-family. It's the issue is that with that becomes some responsibilities, so you're not impactful negatively to the other residents that are in there that they, obviously, they all support. The general deal is they support it. They just don't want to have the disturbances and always have to feel that if someone calls at 4 in the morning, they always have to call the police. They should not have to always call the police. If there's a rooster crowing at 4:15, they should be able to sleep with their windows open, okay, in the summertime, and not have to worry about being disturbed. Okay, that's the issue that's come to the council. And a number of residents went to the city council, like I explained before, and that's why we're here. And I think people can have chickens. I think egg laying is fine. We're open to the discussion on meat production. We're open on going back to, hey, have them, but follow the zoning rules that's always been on the books. And the only way to get to that point, as I see it, is through a registration and inspection. And not an intrusive one where we're going in and measuring 2 square feet for every bird in the coop. That's not the importance to me, is that location. I'd like to hear from someone who's been infected on the other side, but I've had people who've had chicken coops put underneath their bedroom window. In our ordinance, your coop is supposed to be 120 feet back from the front yard line. Why? because most houses are 40 feet back, they're 60 feet in length, that's 100, so you got 20 extra feet before the next accessory structure starts. So when a coop is put right next to a window, that's disruptive, okay? And so we're not saying not have the chickens, let's be better stewards of that. And it's not your fault because the chicken owners didn't know when they got into the chicken business, from what I've been able to observe and what I've read from people and talked to people, they didn't know what the rules were. They didn't know chickens had to have permits. They didn't know the coops had to have permits, so they put the coops up. Okay, so it's an educational process, and I think and again, this is me, that we have a method, and my methodology is 1,000 birds, 1,000 square feet per bird. That's 20 chickens per half acre. You know, if you did that math, you could get up to 30 on a 3/4 acre, okay? I don't see that as a big downturn, you know? It's not, I think someone said at the last meeting, these are arbitrarily low numbers that aren't based in reality, okay? But in reviewing what's out there, I think there's a methodology to allow you to have birds for egg production, because that's what we heard mainly at the last meeting. If you do have birds that stop laying eggs, and if they're not, you don't have your 20, you could keep them, because we heard that some people don't want to cull their birds. They don't want to euthanize them or whatever. And, you know, so I think we have a way to get to that endpoint. But then again, the city has the right to look at the health, safety, and welfare of the whole community in zoning. And that's, you know, that's the end of the game. And a lot of towns solve that by not allowing chickens at all. Look at our 3 next door neighbors. Glenview, Arlington Heights, and Mount Prospect. You can't have a chicken in any one of those towns. They just outright ban them. I don't think that's the way to go. You know, and because there's obviously a place for it. So that's my report.
Okay, I don't feel listened to, so I'm not going to say
No.
anything more.
I had a couple of suggestions on terms. This is Randy Brace again, 300 Linden North. I had a few questions about other ways that neighbors can report noise violations, or if a carve-out can be made so that the police don't have to come out, such as allowing cell phone video or recordings of the issue, in order to kind of maybe progress a starting, instead of like a nuisance dog that's out barking every day that somebody locks out. You know, if you have a rooster or some noise issue that's happening at hours that are not enforceable or easily observable by enforcement, can we provide, instead of going right to fining, for example, can we provide a graduated remedy, such as somebody can make a complaint, anonymous, the owner, the registered, as you're suggesting, owner is notified of the complaint without being fined in order to seek remedy. And again, if after some short period of time stated, be offered again a choice, if there's another complaint, that then there's a further remedy, such as you have a rooster crowing, so they try the collar doesn't work, so then they have to go and move on to the cull or rehome type of remedy. And then if that still doesn't happen, then we're talking fine, where somebody has to observe it. So you have several steps of notifying an attempt of remedy before we get to the point of an enforcement officer having to witness it.
The question I have is twofold. Number one, the impact of that rooster to the complaining party, and the disruption in life, and their, you know, how long is that supposed to go? Because that's one of the things I'm hearing.
Oh, I understand.
And so that's one. Number two, the other question is, only one town that I've read their ordinances has a situation where you have a 3-strike rule. If you get 3 strikes, you lose your registration. All your coops have to be down in 15 days. All your birds have to be gone, and you lose your registration for a year. I'm not proposing it. But what would be, you know, and I don't want to write tickets. That's not the issue. You know, our job when we go out to our complaints is to find compliance. The problem is we're here and we write a lot of tickets because people don't comply when given the opportunity. We give plenty of exceptions. It's not, our goal isn't to fine, and that's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you in terms of how fast the remedy has to happen, or if it's a 3-strike rule or something like that, how quickly things can move along. I mean, I think you can order one of those chicken collars off of Amazon and get it in 2 days. So, from time of notification to time of, maybe that's only a few weeks, but I mean, just alternative ideas of taking a valid complaint using cell phone video or some other recording and evidence other than somebody physically having to be there. I mean, I'm just trying to offer options that reduce the enforcement load on you guys, as well as try to remedy the issues that some people are having.
And one of the things I do have to let all of you know is because they are civil citations, I have to follow the rules established by the Cook County court system. And the Cook County court system won't let me use videotape yet.
For sure. No.
Okay,
I
so
was
at the end of
offering
the
it as
day,
like
I'm,
a way for you to start the process or some other way.
which is
And then you
understandable.
realize that it's like that after attempts of remedy, nothing is done, then you have to put some real effort into the enforcement part at the end of all of that.
So,
But it's giving somebody a chance first.
and I think if we put some standards in place, that could be part of this, and that's a
Yeah.
very good suggestion is how to table that.
And it's an
Enforcement side.
elegant, alternative to an outright ban. Sorry.
You know,
Well, you know what, I don't want to take away
She's
your.
been, she's been having her hand up for
Yeah,
like
yours is
30
fine.
minutes.
And we can address the meat chickens, I'll come up later.
So, thank you.
You know what, let her, she's been waiting for like a real long time to
So
speak.
have I.
Yeah, but we can see both you guys, she's been doing this since she's been talking, so.
Thank you. I'm Becky Fiscone, if you don't remember me. I didn't bring my little sidekick tonight, but I'm at 213 South Maple Lane. So, you know me, I'm an avid rooster, I love roosters, and I totally understand. I want to play fair. I want to listen to what you guys have to say. I love my neighbors. I want everybody to be happy. I'm all, in agreement with that. So my thing is, I think first off, there's just a bad stigma. When people hear rooster, they think negative. It's like when people hear the word pit bull instead of dog. And I've learned from having so many different roosters in my yard, I've never had a complaint that I know of. So I think it's also it's not always like, I told you last year I had up to 9 roosters at one time because I was saving them from other cities. Now I'm down to 2. And it's funny, I was walking my dog yesterday, my neighbor came up to me 3 doors down and she goes, I haven't heard your rooster, is everything okay? Did the city, I heard they were meeting, did they get rid of your rooster? And I'm like, no. And I'm like, he's just been quiet, So I have a quieter one now that I kept and I rehomed the louder one. So there's lots of things we can do. But I also think it depends on the breed of the rooster. I have silkies that are very small that don't make a lot of noise as a rooster. So I want neighbors that are against the rooster to kind of do their research as well instead of just putting a stigma on roosters. I have a neighbor that has a generator that blows every day so loud, and I'm sitting on the patio and I hear it, but I just don't complain because we all have something. And so I wish everybody could just be a little bit more neighborly and a little bit more lenient, but I do agree if it's causing a concern, like you said, at 4 in the morning, which it's not every day at 4 in the morning, I know my own roosters. But if a neighbor does complain, I wish we could have like a 2-strike or a 3-strike and you're out. That you could call me and say, and you don't need evidence, I don't care. If you just say, Becky, somebody complained, I'm not gonna say who, but you gotta get rid of that rooster if it happens again, I'd be totally fine with that. But I just don't think it's fair to punish me after all these years of having it when I haven't gotten a complaint that I know of. And from walking around in my neighborhood, I haven't had an issue. And I'm not saying maybe somebody did complain, but I just wish you guys would tell us and we would have a chance to fix it. Sometimes it's also, now that I've been paying attention to other people's coops, it's where they're presented in the lot. If they're on a corner, they're right by the road, or they're really close to that neighbor's house. And so I think by you saying about doing inspections, that could help too. I have mine placed behind my garage, which I think kind of sound barriers it. I mean, I don't know. But I just think instead of saying no, if you could be a little bit more open-minded and come up with something that would be a little work and maybe try it for the next year. And if it's still a rooster thing is like bad a year later, maybe come back and we relook at it again. And you could say, hey, now that, you know, we did the inspections, we all have our permits, I've realized that now the complaints are only 3 out of the 10 were rooster related. Or if it is more rooster related, that then we come back and say, you know what, we can't do roosters. You know, I just wish we could be a little bit more open-minded. And then I don't know how you feel about the duck thing, but again, research, the ducks that I had were Muscovies, and they don't make any noise, they don't quack. They walk around and wag their tails. So again, it's the type of breed, it's, you know, so I don't know. I just wish people were more research, and I'm not saying I'm like a chicken expert, believe me, I've learned just in the last few years of having them how sad and hard and health issues that come around, you know, around and how much work they are. That's why I did downsize so much, but I just think people need to research more, and I know you've been doing your research.
So one of the issues, the question I asked
Yeah.
a couple of the other code officials was, why was there certain things from your council or your trustees or your governing body? And what the general rule was is they didn't want to have to pick and choose what species or subspecies of birds that people had. That's not the purpose of what we're trying to do. So therefore, you as a resident should be able to choose the birds you had, but the ones that, in their experience, is why they wrote the rules they did for those towns. Okay, and that's.
And I feel, like I said, I feel like they're very, I don't know what the word to use, but they're very against, like a lot of, all the apartments around here, if you call, they're against pit bulls. Like, it's just like a bad omen. And people hear the word rooster and they freak out. Some people come to my house and they don't even know it's a rooster. You know, they're like, isn't that a hen? And I'm like, no, that's actually a rooster. They don't know. And I also use it because they protect my flock when they are free ranging. And we have so many hawks. We have a bald eagle that's been visiting the slough, I just saw. You know, they came down in somebody's yard. It's like, we need that protection, and the roosters do help save our chickens too. So, I mean, there's a lot of good too. And like I said, they don't crow the same time every day. Sometimes mine don't crow until they see me like go to the bathroom and turn on the light, and they see a light and they're like, oh, she's up, you know? So it just, again, it depends on the bird. It's like any animal. Some are awesome. It's just like us. I feel like your voice carries louder than his, you know what I mean? So I just don't want to be, I'm sorry to use your name, but I don't, you know, everybody's different. Every bird is different. I mean, all of us that own chickens can say that every single chicken is a different personality, a different sound. Even the hens can be loud at times. So I just want that to go into this.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, I'm Lynn Schumacher. I live in Country Gardens. I live at 19 South Wildwood, and I'm here against the chickens. Well, not against the chickens, as I said, against the roosters. I've lived with chickens and roosters and a barking dog and farmland and smelly everything since 2018 with my neighbors. And I would be calling the police department 10 to 15 times a day if I was trying to constantly get rid of what goes on next door. I won't do that because I want the police to take care of a child that's being hurt or a house that's being robbed, which we have in our neighborhood. That is a very difficult thing for us to do, to call the police, because our neighbors are so rude and disrespectful.
Mrs. Schumacher, I'm going to ask you to speak into the microphone, so
Speak
when
for
I
the
do the
council.
minutes,
Okay,
I can hear you,
sorry.
so thank you.
I've listened to everything. I listened to the last meeting. I left because it was clear that what I was feeling, no one was interested. Well, you were interested in, but the room was not interested in. But I'm at the point where I need to tell a little bit of what I've been dealing with since 2018 and how it's impacted our way of life, to the way we are locked in our house. We never have our windows open. We have our air conditioning on most of the year except in the winter. And even if we go outside for a little while to sit on our deck and enjoy our yard that we used to enjoy, there's always something clucking or squawking. There used to be roosters. He lied to us. He said he wasn't going to have roosters, then he had roosters. So after a couple years, we did start calling the police. And I don't think he got rid of the roosters. I think he put those collars on them, and that's the squawking that we hear all the time now, which is really just as bad as the roosters. It's not just 4 o'clock in the morning. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30, it's all day long until dusk. Then they stop. The other thing that goes on, and I'm not going off my notes here because what I've listened to is just so bothers me so much that you want me to research what kind of rooster you have in your yard. I don't care. I just don't want it there. It's bothering me. Our neighbors put up a chicken coop on the side of the house that our bedrooms are on. So he's got had the roosters crowing, now he's got the chickens squawking, them clucking, and of course they're out there working their farmland with their dog that barks all the time. So you got the chickens, the squawking, the dog. We never have any peace and quiet in our yard unless they're not home. Last summer, and this just goes with the type with what is happening. It's not just the chickens, it's the whole farmland thing. They have people that come for 6 months, and last summer they built inside of the house, outside of the house, 2 more, 3 more, I don't know, different structures in the yard, sawing and hammering and everything from morning until dusk, and even sometime at night they had their lights on. They were sawing a pontoon boat, metal on metal, at night while their dog is barking and their chickens are squawking. It's just, and we used to cut their front lawn because they wouldn't even, they were so busy with their farmland in the back and their chickens that they wouldn't even take care of their house. I know this is going a little bit off course, but it's speaking to the dogs that bark, and the leaf blower is funny because they've got a leaf blower that you wouldn't believe. But it goes to the whole thing, and I understand that people love their chickens and they're their pets, and that's okay, I get it. But what about me? What about when the coyotes come in my yard and can't get through to the chicken coop, so they sit there, they've ruined things in our yard, or the other animals, whatever animals, dig under my neighbor's fence to get to the chicken coop, but they don't know it. So now the chickens get out and they come in our yard, and we're sitting in our living room at night and we've got lights flashing in our windows all over around the house, scaring the heck out of us because they're out there looking for their stupid chickens. And it's at the point where I don't even want them in my yard. I don't want them in my yard.
You should call the police on that neighbor.
Well, again.
You're making all of us look horrible neighbors.
Again.
Okay, well, time out.
Hold on, let's let her finish.
I'm saying that I think, well, I know I'm off track, but you guys just got me really kind of crazy. But I really think that to get back at this, you can't just call the police. You can't just say, well, you know, let's put in a first time, second time, third time. No, because I would be calling so many times a day, and then, you know what? I sit out on my deck with my AirPods on because I don't want to listen to what's going on next door. And I just feel like we're all taking in everything for all the people that want their chickens, but what about most of the community that doesn't have chickens?
Speak for yourself, not everyone else.
You guys cannot
Yes,
interrupt. Hey,
please,
you
please,
cannot
let's
interrupt.
keep, we have to keep this under control. So I ask everyone, when you're at the podium, please,
Excuse
we have to be
Mrs.
respectful.
Schumacher,
Please,
Speak
please.
to us, okay?
I don't think what's going on is fair to people like me who have put up with what I'm putting up with since 2018, and because I'm a good person and don't want to call the police all the time, I'm asking for banning the roosters. I don't see a way to live with the roosters. I do think people need to be educated on how to take care of their chickens. And I also think, like you've talked about, the number of chickens, they need to be we need to have a way to have the number of chickens. But I also think that there has to be somebody, a Prospect Heights person, somebody who can take these complaints, because it's not just the chickens, it's the dogs, it's the whole thing. And they can educate these people on being good neighbors and having these people understand why their neighbors are upset with them. I mean, we tried with our neighbors, we can't. Now we just go out there and yell at the dog because the chicken's gonna pay attention to us, but the dog does. But there's gotta be a way that there's somebody that's responsible for educating these people and make sure that these people are educated in how to be good neighbors, because I don't think that all of them really know how disrespectful they're being. And my last point is, we live in a suburb. We do not live in farmland. And when I walk through Country Gardens, I hear the roosters. I walk through my neighborhood just about every day. And I don't enjoy hearing the roosters when I walk through my neighborhood, because I live in a suburb. I don't live in a farmland situation, and it seems to me like that's what people think it should be. There's a lot less expensive places for farmland, and so all I'm saying, I'm sorry that I seem to be so angry. I don't mean to be that way, but I sat there and listened to all these things, and it's like, what about the people that don't, or what about, let's just say, what about me? What about me? What are you going to do for me and everything I've been going through? You going to pay my air conditioning bill because it's on all the time? What are you going to do for me? Because these people have to have their chickens and their noise and their all the stuff. I've been here for over 35 years. I think I kind of deserve some respect, and I'm certainly not getting it, and I am not willing to be calling the police all the time and taking that service away from people who really need it. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you,
to me.
thank you
I'm
for
sorry
speaking
I
up.
was a little-
Great, thank you.
My turn? Thank you. Hi, Christine Shield, 103 Schoenbeck. Gosh, so many things to think about. How many individual complainants or people against chickens are there?
That's a hard number to quantify because, like I told you, we don't get from the police department reports on number of complaints. If they go out there and don't observe it, it's not recorded as a valid complaint.
Right, I'm not asking
Okay,
about how many
and-
complaints, how many complainants, how many people have called the city to complain about roosters?
It averages anywhere between a dozen and 2 a summer, and it's usually in the summer. And usually it's a person that has gone through they're saying, I've talked to my neighbor, I've done this, I can't handle this. We go out there, we try and address it, we've told them, hey, if you can't control the rooster, get rid of it. We tell people on the phone when they're calling, can we have it? Is there a restriction on roosters? No. But if it causes, we get a complaint, noise complaint, if they're verified, you're gonna have to control the nuisance, but it still comes.
Right, I understand, but it honestly sounds, and what she said really seemed to support this, that it's a very small number of people, possibly even less than 10, who have complained multiple times about an individual neighbor. I mean, if you're getting 12
No.
calls a summer and you're saying those are individual calls?
Yeah.
So 12 people complaining
But
that are unhappy about their situation, but we have 75 to 100 chicken owners. And so we're going to
But-
make a rule for the 100 based on 12 people who are unhappy. And let me add one
Go
thing
ahead.
onto that. Yeah, I work in agriculture. This is my job. I do this every day. I've been doing it for a long time. And for several years, I worked for as a humane investigator for the Illinois Department of Ag. So my role was to go out on neighbor complaints. So if there was a welfare complaint, a noise complaint involving an animal, I did hooved animals mostly, I would go out and talk to the owner of the animal and then talk to the complainant and try and work out a solution. 99 times out of 100, these complaints started as neighbor disputes about something else. These are two people who don't like each other. They don't like the fact that the noise, the music is too loud. They're building a pontoon boat in their backyard. They don't like the dog, but so they're going to call the Department of Ag and complain about the horse or the rooster or the chicken because they think that is the easiest way to cause problems for someone they already have a problem with in other areas and they already don't like. And what she said made it so clear. This is a massive neighbor dispute where the chickens are the scapegoat. The rooster is the scapegoat. There's so many other problems here. And the police are the solution for this. If my neighbor is running his motorcycle in his driveway nonstop and it's creating a lot of noise and disruption in my yard, the only solution, if after I've talked to him and he's declined to turn the motorcycle off or turn the loud music down or any other loud noise, the solution is to call the police. This is what they're there for. This is why we have the noise ordinance. If you're going to try and, it's like playing whack-a-mole. If you want to pass an ordinance for every single noisy item, you'll end up you'll ban motorcycles, you'll ban loud music, you'll ban, oh gosh, I don't know, building pontoon boats in backyards, like trucks. Yeah, it's playing whack-a-mole. We have one big noise ordinance that should cover all of these things, and the solution, the way this works is if your neighbor is noisy, you call the police. And if you don't want to call the police, then you don't want to follow the system that we have. That is what we have, and that's the system that works. But you have to be willing to pick up the phone and call the police. You're not pulling them away from some more urgent problem. My husband's a police officer, so I'm pretty well versed with what the police do. If they have a more urgent problem, they will prioritize the child in need, the robbery that's happening at that moment. They'll do that first before they go to a noise complaint. So you're not pulling them away from anything. And if something happens while they're there, they're going to leave the noise complaint to go to that more urgent thing, and then they'll revisit it later. I understand that it's a little bit tricky to catch a rooster crowing, but maybe the reason why that's tricky is because it's not really that big of a problem.
Point taken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So one other thought I had. I really would ask you guys to look at grandfathering in some of the coops that have not caused a neighbor dispute. So, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting and also on the phone, that those of us that built coops called the city and asked, what are the rules for a coop? What should we do? And we're told, whatever you do is fine. As long as it's not too big, we really got the brush off and they're like, whatever you want to do is fine. Just don't cause a problem. Make sure you can move it if there's a problem later. So we were not told when we built our coop that it's an ancillary structure, that it needs to follow these sort of specific rules. I get that they're there, and maybe we should have done our due diligence more than we did, but we did get information from the city that wasn't necessarily accurate. So if no one has complained about our coop, then maybe it doesn't need to be brought 100% into compliance. Like maybe there's some flexibility there to make sure that we're not overburdening us when we got information from the city that wasn't correct, and I think that's true.
Or like a neighbor waiver or something.
Sure, yeah.
Those are great suggestions. The hard part is a neighbor waiver is not legal. It doesn't hold up, it doesn't bind anything. The idea of the issue comes down to is without having documentation, and I know I'm not saying you didn't call, okay, but is there a solution? How close to compliance can you get? Okay.
Sure, yeah.
That's it, and like I think I've said a number of times, it's not here about taking away or being punitive. It's just we got to come to a solution where those people, and there's a lot of people out there that, and I've read it in their material and I've talked to them on the phone, that are afraid of it. They may be afraid of their neighbor, there may be other issues, there may be that. They don't want to call us, and then when it gets to the point when they do notify us, and that's probably why we have such few complaints, is because they don't either want to or they don't. It's hard to enforce. And so we go out there, check, and I've done some of those inspections over my almost 9 years here. Then a year or two later, they don't call because they don't think anything got solved. And I've heard that. So, and again, it's not saying it's got to go, but how do we address, and this is a zoning lessons, folks. Zoning rules and laws were established to regulate uses, and they benefit the greater good. That's why you don't have gas refineries next to single-family large lots. That's why you don't have tenement housing next to other places. That's why you have industry by the airport, not in your backyard. So, and again, the use is an R1 single family, but how can we find a comparable use on that? Okay, where it's not disruptive to the 98% of the rest of the community. And I'm sure there's a small percentage, because there's a small percentage of but for us to get the calls, obviously something's going on. And our current standards of trying to enforcement haven't been working, because we're still getting the calls. But there could be a solution in there.
But only 12 a year, 12 calls a year.
But that's, if it's 12 separate calls,
Yeah.
it's a 10%, roughly, if there's less than 100, so,
How many calls do we get about barking dogs?
I don't know, that goes to the police department.
Oh, because
Okay. I don't-
I really
I-
feel like if we're going to ban roosters, we need to ban barking dogs too. I mean, no more dogs in Prospect Heights. I'll get rid of mine. Everyone can get rid of all their dogs because
That's not the debate. I understand I understand the argument. It's just, at the end of the day, the issue was brought to council, and they want us to come up with a set of rules. And like I said, every single person who came or who sent me stuff that were in opposition, there was one common denominator. And that was the noise disruption.
So my understanding was from the last meeting that council asked you to study this issue and make a recommendation, not that you were asked to make a rule. So you could go back and make the recommendation. We don't need a rule. We studied the issue and we think what we have is fine. Is that the case?
There's going to be some changes, because what we found is that we have coops that are under bedroom windows. We've had people that have put them in the wrong places. We got people in the side yard. This winter, with the leaves off the tree, we did a visual survey, drive-by. Guess what? There are a significant number of people that have coops in the wrong places, and we're not making judgments. We've got people that are only supposed to use less than 20% of their rear yard that have 100% coops, garden boxes, and other things which are not residential uses, that they've turned it into an agricultural type of use. Okay? When you have no green grass to mow because it's all garden, raised garden boxes and chicken coops and runs and ancillary sheds and accessory structures to support that, that's not a residential use anymore, if you look at the zoning definition. Okay? Because they were never permitted, people have been allowed to do it, so that is impactful. There's one property in town that their straw and manure is in plain sight, and when the southwest wind blows, it goes to the northeast, and the two houses immediately next door to them are for sale. It may not be the reason for that, but it may be. I don't know. Okay, so those are the types of things that rules are going to be changed to, try and get back to what the code originally, I think, intended to cover. Now, the other one, I think we can figure out a solution on the number of birds, and I think we can figure out a solution on the noise side. But the fact of the matter is people shouldn't have to call the police because of noise disturbances. It happens. So that's in my recommendation is going to be for some changes.
Okay, well, I would ask for some flexibility on the coops where you think you can, to help us, because I think we know that the last people in the city were not giving out accurate information, so some of us built coops based on incorrect information. And the other thing I would like to say is a word in support of roosters. Roosters are really important to flocks. If you have a fenced yard and you want your chickens to run freely in your yard, in your fenced area where they're not escaping and causing a nuisance for anybody else, they're really at risk for predation on hawks and eagles and things like that, and you really need your rooster to protect them. I think the rooster thing, the crowing thing, is a solvable problem. And, I think it just doesn't seem like there's enough complaints, more so than barking dogs, to mean that we need to ban them. Maybe we limit them, I'm okay with that, but I think an outright ban isn't appropriate for this community. I understand other communities maybe chose that route, but for this community, I feel like this board serves this community. I think for this community, roosters are an okay choice. And obviously, people support that. Most people do.
Well, the lady with the head.
Hi, I'm Nikki Moylan, baby's born now, 108 West Kenilworth. Sorry, I'm gonna be swaying a little bit so he doesn't wake up. I do not have a rooster, so I'm just kind of hearing both sides of thing. I just wanna point out, I would be super frustrated if I were you as well, if I was the lady who spoke before. It sounds like what she has gone through, I would not wanna go through that. I also agree with the other people who have said, like, the people who don't have, or the people who have roosters who have no complaints, maybe they have no complaints. And so I don't believe an outright ban is the correct action. I think her issue needs to get solved because it sounds really awful. And I don't think that since 2018, she should have had to be dealing with that. The way that the code is written is that I know people don't want to call the police, but noise is the police, it's under the police code. So unless that changes, so that could be, I don't know if that can be a proposal, but it seems like the police, part of their job, yes, we want them to do like high crime and stuff like that if it's there. And like the former lady said, if they get called, they're going to go, you know, take precedent to whatever call they get. However, their job is to maintain the peace, right? And if she doesn't have peace at her house, that's where the noise ordinance comes in. So I don't understand why we can't do a 3 strikes, you're out. That I think Randy Brace proposed that. I know Grace has proposed that. So I hope that you guys take that 3 strikes and you're out into consideration, because if she had followed that, or if that was a rule in our city where she could call the police, check it out, then maybe there's a fine, or they get the opportunity to do a collar. It sounds like this rooster is maybe still squawking with the collar on. That's not working. Okay, let's do a fine. If that doesn't work, then the rooster needs to go. And then she wouldn't have that issue. Now, in terms of like the other issues with her neighbor that she's dealing with, maybe the police would have to do more things, but that's not a chicken issue, right? So in terms of the roosters, I just want to say, as a non-rooster owner, I think we can have both. I think we can have roosters in our city. You could even limit them to the number of hens, because too many roosters with, depending on the number of the flock, can be a problem. Like roosters can get aggressive with each other. Their job is to protect their flock. So you can do your research on that, on how many roosters per group of hens you have. So that would be one. Another solution to not have like a home with 5 roosters and a small amount of hens, if that were a complaint. But I think that we can do a 3 strikes situation that would cover the issues that unfortunately a couple people are dealing with, but the majority of chicken owners are not dealing with.
Okay.
So, and I would love to hear like maybe from some other neighbors of like what their issue is. I know there's a couple different homes here. I know the complaints in October. I kept asking in January, like what was done? Because yeah, our neighbors shouldn't have to deal with it, but we also, chicken owners who are doing the right thing shouldn't be getting penalized. If there's animal welfare issues, I also want to know if those have been dealt with. You should not smell the chickens. You shouldn't, if they're being properly cared for. And if they're getting smells into their windows, that's a problem. Even if the coop is right outside, like when I collect eggs, I don't smell my chickens. So if they're getting all the way up into a window, even if the coop's outside, that's an animal welfare issue, and I'd like to know what has been addressed for the neighbors who are experiencing those problems. Thank you.
I think the lady in the pink,
Just, did you have a?
no.
Linda Kleinschmidt, 410 West Clarendon. We have one rooster to the east of us and another rooster to the rest of us. Not only do I hear them when the windows are open, I hear them in the winter, windows and doors shut. And yesterday I timed it, the one rooster, and I think it was the one to the east of us, crowed continuously for 10 minutes. That is unacceptable. And if I need to start calling the police department every time that happens, I will do that. And the police came out one time and he basically told me, unless we hear them, there's nothing they can do. So I felt like there was no use to call them after that, because what's the probability of them hearing the rooster going? And then what's really fun is when they start crowing against each other. It's unacceptable.
Can I have your first name again for the record?
Linda.
Linda, thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Joel Steffens. I live at 301 East Clarendon. I've been a Prospect Heights resident for about 37 years, and I love Prospect Heights. You guys got a tough job. Regarding the chickens, I got them about 12 years ago, and I called before I got them, and I was told, yeah, you can have chickens. Don't get a rooster because you'll have to deal with complaints if you get a rooster. Don't let them run free because you'll have to deal with complaints. So I didn't do any of those things, so I didn't have to deal with complaints. I don't think I've had any complaints because nobody's come to my door from the village or any of my neighbors. I think my neighbors all love them. They bring their kids over, their grandkids, and they love looking at the chickens. So what I'm seeing is up here that there is a noise ordinance and you're not supposed to let them run free. I think what started all this was I saw a video of somebody here complaining about the chickens where his neighbor had 70 chickens. They're running all over the place. They're making all this noise. Well, how come that complaint isn't dealt with? The noise ordinance, I don't understand why, if there is one, I mean, that poor woman, she shouldn't have to feel guilty about calling the police. If my neighbor was playing loud rock and roll music all night, I would go over and talk to him, because I'm a polite guy, and say, hey, could you knock that off? And if he just blows me off, then I'm going to call and make a complaint. So my issue is, I think there's stuff already on the books, and I just don't think they're being enforced.
That's a good observation on your part. What we're saying is, I cannot take it. And I'm just saying from an enforcement officer perspective. My inspectors under the zoning code and even if we're allowed to cite the noise ordinance out of the police code, have to physically either have a witnessed event, and we don't have to give extensions. If we witness it, we could issue the ticket right there. We try and tell them if it's heard, and I know the police do this all the time, hey, just knock it off, get control of your deal, so it doesn't bother. But at some point in time, that behavior hasn't been changing because it caused other residents to bring it to the attention. Unless I'm physically there, I cannot write the ticket against it. That's just the way it works in our court system. Okay, period. And so if it continually happens and I can't do anything, what ends up happening, and I think one of the reasons the lady said, is that they stop calling. It's still a nuisance, it's still a problem, but the number of complaints may not happen, and we don't have the staff to drive around with our windows open listening to try and identify where it is. That's not the issue.
Is that not also an issue with dogs and motorcycles and power tools late at night? If you don't catch it, you can't do anything? I mean, it's the same.
But what we've done is we give them a notice. If it happens again, we give them another notice. If it happens again, we give them another notice. We continue giving them notices, but until such point, so therefore, there's a frustration factor that comes in both on our side, neighbor side, the people that.
I feel so bad for them.
When I show up to their house, it's a frustration side for the person I'm showing up to. So, trying to figure out how to get rid of the frustrations.
Yeah, I can say something really quickly. So my name is Agnes Wojnarski, and I used to have chickens 10 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago. And at one point, I did have a rooster, and one of my neighbors complained, and I got a letter from the city. And so I called someone from the city, and I said, okay, let me try to get rid of this rooster or do something so my neighbors aren't unhappy. Tried to find a home for the rooster, couldn't find a home for the rooster. Got one of those collars, worked for a little bit until he figured out how to pull it off. Got a second notice. The second notice came. Tried to find a home for the rooster again.
And then when the third notice came, I just had them called and that was it. Then it was over and done. It was really sad for my kids, but I did it, and there was no problem. It was just three little tiny notices. That was 10 years ago, though.
You were a compliant resident. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but
I think what her point was is, you know, she's asking you to help legislate better neighbors. We all know that's impossible.
So, let me say real quick, I've had 5 examples I've heard. The leaf blower example, the loud music example, the motorcycle example, and, what was the fourth one? I wrote in my-
The pontoon
Never mind.
boats.
So, would we all agree if these noises are happening at times they shouldn't be happening, those are bad neighbors? Would we all agree to that? Okay, so you guys are equating that to a rooster noise. You're equating yourselves to bad neighbors. Understand that.
No, we're not.
But when you say, okay, let me finish. When you guys say, you call for a leaf blower, you call for this, if that neighbor continues to do that noise, understand, what I'm saying to you is, you're equating yourself, okay, well, this is allowed, or this is it's a noise nuisance, we have a place for it. That person is not being a good neighbor and is making noises, and now we're having to enforce it. This is happening with the roosters. Whether you say it's small or not, it's happening. Okay, and we're not suggesting you're bad neighbors, but you have to understand, you guys are equating yourselves to bad neighbors when you're doing this. It's the same thing when you're saying, I'm not suggesting you're doing it on purpose, but when people have roosters going, if I have a rooster going at 4 in the morning, I'm not a chicken guy, I'm not a rooster guy. I'm for the chickens, okay? I remember during COVID, we walked through, I might be one of your houses, and we're walking there, and listen, I've been raised in the suburbs, Mount Prospect, no one has chickens in Mount Prospect. It was cool for me to see people with chickens in their backyards. I thought it was awesome, you know what I'm saying? Someone actually gave us eggs. We took them home, we cooked them, it was fantastic. So, but if my neighbor tomorrow at 4 in the morning has a rooster, it's going off every day at 4 in the morning, and I have 4 kids, all grew up here, and they kept them up all night. I have dogs behind me that bark all the time. We put up shrubbery, it stopped them. If we had a solution on stopping roosters from crowing it, and if it's 1 out of 10, it's still 1 out of 10. There is a problem. Obviously, we're not here just for the fact that we had nothing to do when we wanted to talk about roosters. There is a problem, but people have to identify that. This is not a small problem. You guys are thinking we hear 10 or 12 complaints a year. You know how many people actually complain that might, out of 100, I'm gonna guess 5 complain. You know what I'm saying? These dogs behind my neighborhood bark every time we're in the backyard. You know how many times I'll call the police? I've lived here for 15 years, probably 3. So it's not like I've called them every time. We deal with it. I hate it. We had to put bushes up. Dogs are a part of our society. I have 2. You guys got to understand what neighboring towns do. We're not just making up rules to be different. We're trying to understand we're in a community, we're in a suburb. We're not in farmland. And we're trying to be as reasonable with the people that have chickens here. But there's got to be a little give, okay? And back to my comment on this. We had this thing with the cars. If you have roosters that don't crow, probably not going to affect you much. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to affect you much. There's a law in place, but Andrew and so forth, they're not going to go to everyone's house and say, how many roosters do you have? But if there's one crowing at 4 in the morning, you guys can't control it, guess what? There's something in place now where we don't have to get the police involved over and over again. There has to be some give on this.
I think the slight misunderstanding of where we're coming from with what you're saying is equating bad neighbors. We're equating, there's already a remedy. Now, whether that remedy works for dogs or motorcycles or power tools.
And if that remedy was,
I understand
if that remedy was working, we wouldn't be
I
here.
understand.
That's
but
what I'm
it's
saying.
not working for those other things either.
It
What are you
is
doing
to a
fix
point,
those
because we're not
things?
trying to ban motorcycles tonight.
Right, so I think we've given up enforcing it.
No, because I've never been woken by a motorcycle. I've never,
I-
we can find out how many complaints we've had about motorcycle leaf blowers, but I bet you it's a fraction of what we're talking about roosters.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm not totally against any of the most of the reasonable suggestions that have been made that are based on trying to find a remedy for everyone in the community. I'm not saying I'm adamantly against any of that. I'm just trying to rectify kind of like our perspective with where you were coming from. And I also want to try to address that when all of these communities were built, as they marched out from the city, every time one was built, it was right next to farmland. It was only 30 years ago that Buffalo Grove was farms. There's still a farm in Wheeling, right? So this was not a way of sterilizing the suburbs there was already farmland right next door that you could go do that right next door. You didn't have to move to Will County. Now that's not the case. Now young families want to have that opportunity. Now young families want to have a large garden and chickens and teach their children about the food, where their food comes from. They don't want to know that it only comes from a factory farm, or that when you go to school and you ask chickens where they come from, they say the grocery store, right? So younger families want to have that option. And I understand that you're not trying to take them away per se. And I would want to offer at some point, whenever everybody else has had their say, to discuss the meat chicken issue, because I think from what I've heard relayed from various conversations, there's a significant misunderstanding there. So if we're ready to have that conversation now.
Before you go on to that, I do have one question for you, and I don't know if you can answer it. One of the ancillary, other than protection, roosters are there for what? Procreation, correct? What do you do with the rooster chicks?
Well, you eat the eggs before they become chicks.
No, if they hatch.
Well, if they hatch,
Oh, if they're hatching.
what do you do? Because we heard in January that a number of folks could never kill one of their chicks or chickens, okay? And I understand that.
When the egg is fertilized and laid, if you eat that egg early, you don't have to candle it. It's once it's been already incubated by another hen and been sitting in the box and kept warm, that it starts turning into a baby chick. When that fertilized egg is laid, there is not like a formed baby chicken in it. It has basically just been fertilized. So just like ovulating and normal human cycle, not to equate humans with chickens because they're different, obviously different, but that egg, when it's taken from the box and it's now cold, will not continue to develop and can be eaten.
Like if you're purposely hatching.
If you're purposely hatching chicks. Now, if you're purposely raising and hatching chicks, I can't speak to what other people are doing with their chickens, if they're using them to supplement their flock, or if they're selling them illegally. I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Because that is just a question that's come up, is because there is a potential for people wanting to.
Schools do it, right? Like schools do it, and they have an issue with, homing those chickens. They think it's cute.
And that if that is an issue with this, or maybe not a planned or a planned outcome of having those there, what then do people do? Do you say, you gotta call them, you gotta do, hide? I don't know the answer.
I think if we go with some sort of numbers limitation, it falls under that purview of, okay, well, you have 10 chickens and now you hatched several and they became full-grown chickens, and then, that's still within that numbers limit. And if they're selling it, that's illegal, as you've said.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, I don't know how to enforce that, but it's already covered.
Let's have someone that hasn't spoken yet.
She has.
Gentleman hasn't spoken yet.
I think it's Lady Black's been waiting for a while in front of us.
Jim Kleinschmidt, 410 West Clarendon Street. I am not against chickens, okay? As long as it's a reasonable number of chickens. I think 1 chicken per 1,000 square feet is excessive, considering some of our lots are 20 and 28,000 square feet. Right now, I deal with 20-plus chickens next to me now, plus the crowing rooster at 4 in the morning and nonstop all day, along with the one that's down to the west of us and south. Those two get into a racket that you can't believe. Now, I've lived in Prospect Heights since 1964. My parents built their house out here. Back then, there was a lot of farm, but not a lot of it was actually done. Well, most of it was just corn and things like that. It was a nice community then. It's still a nice community. That's why I still live here. I only left for about 2 years and came back. So, like I said, I'm not against chickens themselves. One chicken per 1,000 square feet, I think is excessive. Because listening to the ones we got next door, which is 20 plus, and our lots are 28,000 square feet, it gets pretty obnoxious at times. But the rooster is the biggest issue. Those 2 roosters, I mean, like I said, we can't even enjoy things. I mean, we used to have a barking dog behind us, and he finally, I don't know what happened to him. They fixed the problem with him or whatever, because I talked to him about it, and they fixed, I don't know if the dog died or whatever, but don't hear him anymore. But that's a different issue. I'm more involved with, the chickens. The chickens, like I said, I'm not against them. We should have some kind of licensing, I think, registration of some kind or something like that, so they're regulated. But the rooster is the big thing. Noisy roosters, I mean, great, you've got quiet roosters, great, I love it, because then you won't even know they're there. The noisy ones is what I'm talking about. So, that's all I got to say.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
What's the issue with 20 chickens?
The 20 chickens, 20-plus chickens we got next to us, they are noisy like you wouldn't believe. Those guys, they go off and just constantly going at each other and the noise of them clucking all the time, or the noises they make, it can be almost deafening at times.
Are they
Thank you.
able to, like, move around at all in their structure?
Oh,
We've got a fenced-in yard, so yeah, they're
all in the backyard.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, Genevieve Charay, 5 Alton Road. I just want, since my baby is apparently melting down, I just want to put out some suggestions for ways forward, since it does sound like changes are going to be made. Just some things to take into consideration so we can help shape something that works for everybody. So I don't have a rooster. I am surrounded by them. One neighbor has 4 roosters. The one behind me has 3. And then someone down the block, so I won't use them as an example, actually. Since they're down the block, I don't have any right to say anything. But the roosters don't bother me. They don't crow incessantly. It sounds like these residents over here are dealing with sort of an extreme situation, and I don't know what can be done to help them or what has been done, but certainly that's not been my experience. We also have the neighbor who has 4 roosters told us a few weeks ago that he has 40 chickens, and we were shocked. He has probably the nicest kept home on the block. It's not super loud. He's just doing a great job of keeping the chickens in a humane way, in a way that they're happy. He's balancing hens to roosters, so it just kind of works out. Which leads me to my next point. I don't have roosters, but if you are using them for protection, it's not like one rooster for the whole flock, regardless of size. You do need to have enough roosters for the number of hens. So just to keep in mind that it is a ratio issue. Usually the number I hear is like 1 rooster for 10 hens. But the other thing is, the way roosters work is you could actually have a bachelor flock, which is all roosters and no hens. And surprise, surprise, when there are no girls around, the fighting pretty much drops to 0. They get along really well, and crowing is really low. So I don't personally know of anyone in Prospect Heights doing the bachelor flock thing, but I do just want to put that out there so you're aware that that is something happening. We do have some neighbors who do like chicken rescue, so the vast majority of chickens needing rescuing are males, so some of those people do have bachelor flocks. So just to let you know that that's a thing that happens. The number 1 chicken per 1,000 square feet, I guess I'll be the dissenting voice. I think that's a lot of space for 1 chicken. I know Lake County uses that number. It's not a number that's based in any kind of like veterinary or poultry keeping. There's no data behind that. There's no science behind that 1,000-foot number. I think they just decided on a number that they felt would keep them so spread out that nobody could complain about it. I had sent Dan earlier some links to the official government designation for pastured hens. So there are some more numbers in there for square footage. It would allow for more than 20 chickens per half acre, but it is a number that's based on research, and it is government enforced as far as a term goes. So the reason I bring that designation up is because it was designed to ensure lots of sunlight, fresh air, room to roam, and things like that, which also cuts down on noise. And the other reason why I think that's important is because I'm hearing so much about the roosters, and that is because, you know, roosters are responsible for most of the noise that chickens make. A lot of roosters don't make a lot of noise, but laying hens across the board are pretty quiet. You hear them make noise after they lay an egg, but the decibels that a laying hen reaches are no louder than human conversation. So you're probably not going to hear much about people who have an issue with laying hens. So for that reason, I would caution against using a prohibitive number like 20 or something like that, because you're really mostly affecting the number of laying hens with a rule like that. So they're not the ones causing the issue, it sounds like.
So are you suggesting no restriction, or do you have a number in mind?
I personally am in favor of no restriction because I do think it comes down to the care and keeping. You know, there's people who can keep 500, I'm just throwing a number at random out here in this instance, but you can keep 500 birds without irritating your neighbors. You can keep 5 birds and make everybody around you miserable. So I think, for me personally, I feel like if you're willing to put in the effort to keep things clean, quiet, and all of that, great, like that's what Prospect Heights is all about. If we do need to have numbers, I think we need to just be mindful that people keep chickens for different reasons. Some of them for eggs for themselves, some of them really enjoy giving to food banks, some of them really are into animal rescue. So even though 20 chickens sounds like a lot to some people, to others it's like a drop in the bucket and it really limits their ability. And you know, I definitely think Randall's the guy to talk to about meat chicken keeping, because in that case you're talking about 7 to 9 weeks, high numbers of chickens that make very little noise. So there are, you know, specifics there. But yeah, in general, I just want to make sure I get one more thing out before my time is up. I also think it could be useful for us to set up some sort of poultry advisory board. It could be volunteer run. It could be directed perhaps by somebody on the zoning board. But if there are cases that are put forth and it just seems like there's not an easy solution or people are not getting heard, people who are knowledgeable about them, we could have a consulting avian vet, you know, as part of it. We could form something like that so that if it gets to that point, we can make a visit, we can assess things, and if you think chicken owners are gonna go easy on other chicken owners, you are dead wrong, because there's nothing good chicken owners hate more than bad chicken keeping, because they put all our birds at risk. So avian flu, Marek's disease, all these things are a threat to our animals, so we're very crazy about biosecurity. So, but we also have the expertise to say, have you tried a crow collar? Have you tried cupboarding your rooster? Sounds kind of funny, but it's literally keeping your rooster in a dark spot in the coop until a certain time of morning when you let them out, so that they can't be waking people up at 4 a.m. If it's dark, the rooster's not crowing unless he's being attacked or the birds are being attacked. So there's a lot of ways to handle this, but I understand, you know, resources are tight. We don't have a huge staff. You're limited as far as what you can do. So to the extent that we can spread the work around a little bit among, you know, citizens who can help put people on improvement plans or whatever. And then if that doesn't work, absolutely. I mean, you know, I'm all for enforcing these laws, finding people who are not taking care of their animals. That's no argument with that. I think you'll find most of us are very pro enforcement. So. Also, I really liked Randall's idea about anonymous reporting to an extent. I think that if you're seeing that it's a huge barrier to people feeling heard, that they are afraid to call the police, are afraid to give their name, maybe are afraid of their neighbors, whatever it is, if there is some sort of special email address we could set up, tip line, something like that, then you might get a better feel for like how big is the problem. You know, if everybody has access to this thing where there's no penalty and no fear of retribution, like what comes forth? I think it could be really interesting. That's all I have to say. Does anyone
One
have
question.
any questions? Sure.
And I know these numbers are arbitrary. You said 500 versus 5. You can say 500 be quiet, 5 can't. What would make 5 not quiet versus 500 quiet?
So if the birds are being kept in a space that's too small for them, that's actually the number one cause of noise. If you have too many roosters for the number of laying hens, so if you have that situation, you can either reduce the number of roosters or you can add hens. Because if the rooster feels like he has his own little flock of girls, he's not competing. He feels comfortable and secure. He's not crowing back and forth. I don't know what the situation is with this house, so I won't speak to it, but what was that? Yep. If they're not being fed properly, if the coop is so dirty that the concentration of ammonia gets too high in there, I mean, that would be really bad. That makes me really sad. Yeah, I mean, kind of like the stuff that would make a dog bark a lot, you know, like basically not getting its basic needs met. So an animal that is given sufficient space. So that's why I did bring up that designation about pastured birds, because the goal of that is what is the most humane setup. If any of you have seen Vital Farms pastured eggs for sale, like at Jewel or whatever, they have that designation because their birds have so much space that basically the designation creates a situation where it's as close to like a bird being in a natural or wild environment as possible. So because of that, you know, happy birds, and when you have happy birds, you generally have happy neighbors.
One more question. I think this was your email about the 1,000 birds per 2.5 acres. The one from
The one you sent today.
Oh, yeah,
I
the
did pass it,
pasture.
I did pass it around to.
Thank you, Dan, I appreciate that.
So, question on you, on this one, where you have, that says about 200 per half acre, but, I'm just assuming here, that's 200 per half acre, but that full half acre is available for the birds,
Yes. that
right?
is-
So in our situation, a full half acre wouldn't be available for the birds, because you're really
I guess you would have
designated
to
to the back,
subtract your
right?
house from it.
The
but-
front yard, the side yard, your patio, I mean, it's
Okay,
a
yeah.
considerable difference in terms of half acre. when you-
Number of structures
Yeah.
needed to support
Yeah.
that
Well, and I
number.
think some of that space allowance is also coop space too, so if we're going to use it, we probably want to figure out like,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
that's why that number,
what
to
that's
me,
based on,
when I read it,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow, that's, but then if you put some thought
So-
behind, a full half acre, if I had available just for chickens,
Right.
I understand, but that's not what we're dealing with, here,
Yeah, like
right,
for,
in general?
for us, I mean, I guess I don't know, as far as I'm aware, it's not illegal to let your chickens free range in your front yard if they're contained, but most people don't have their front yard contained, so they don't.
We
I
don't put fences in the front
My-
yards
I
in
mean,
the town.
mine
We have
stay
enough
in the
problems with
back,
fences.
So, you know, in our case, we really just have our house, and then we were lucky when we moved here, we have like a detached garage complex, and they made the garage really tiny and the workroom really big. So we built our coop as like an aviary inside the workroom. So we didn't have to create a new structure or anything like that, but so for us, it's just those two structures taking up room, and the rest, they're just free to roam. We're on a large 1-acre lot, so, you know, it's been great for us. But yeah, if you do have a plot that's like covered in, I don't know, boat ramps and like, you know, sheds, barns, if there's no room for the chickens to actually move, then yeah, that defeats the purpose.
So just a little zoning lesson here, okay? We have to keep, you're only allowed 1,000 square feet for accessory structures on your property, period. And that all has to be in the rear yard. So now you've limited that space significantly down because of structures. There's a large number of people with the detached garages. They already have a 200 square foot permitted shed, which means any other structure you're allowed 80 square feet. Okay? So then if you try and add another 20 chickens on, and let's just assume that they need 5 square feet per bird, okay? That's another 100 square feet of structure. Now you're in violation of the zoning code. So that's the hard part with trying to establish limits, is given the geometry of the rear yard, the various geometry impediments in that rear yard, to come to a rightful number that could be appropriate for that space.
Right.
So
And
it's,
that's, I think, the issue with like creating one number
Well-
is it might need to be more of a formula.
So therefore, if you have this, and you can, and what I'm eventually going to get to is, as long as you have X number of square footage, you don't have other accessory structures that go against the code, and you can still use that extra space for your chickens, that will dictate a number. And the only way to do that is to have a one-on-one application to take a look. But there could be a person that does not have a detached garage, that does not have the 200 square foot shed, that does not have the 80 square foot dog run or outdoor kennel. Now, they could potentially have some more. Again, how much is going to be dedicated to the coop structure? How much is going to be dedicated to that? Oh yeah, then we have to remember, we have to subtract for side yard and rear yard setbacks to kind of give spacing. So it's not an exact science, and there's going to be some, but the conditions could warrant more for one lot and less for another.
Right. I think that that's absolutely going
So-
to be the case.
But the issue is how do you codify it? Okay, that's the issue, is how to put a recommendation forward. And I think my personal opinion in reading some of the other ordinances, 6, and be done with it. You know, if you look at some of the other ordinances that I've reviewed, maximum number is 6.
It's certainly quick and easy.
Yeah.
But does it serve the people, I guess, is the issue.
But again, it serves the municipality, so they don't have to do that, and then they have a
Right.
number they can say, here, this is what you're allowed.
Right.
Okay? And I don't know if that, and what I think I've made myself clear, I don't think that's where we're at.
Right.
Okay? But that's, and because they're, and I know you sent me the information on the pasture and free range and stuff, and that's more related to getting into production farming. I went through and I took a quick look at the website
Okay.
and stuff and understand where they're coming. Remember, we're an urban metro community, according to the US Census Bureau. We've got more than 1,000 residents per square mile. We got all these other
Right.
things that these types of issues have to be accounted for.
And I think that's why this is such a sticky kind of situation where we're having trouble finding comparables to hold ourselves up to, because I think you used a phrase in the last meeting, you said we're a rural suburban town, and that was such a good term, because it's like now we are having to walk the line between the rural and the suburban, and what does that mean? And it does mean situations like this.
In going back, if you look at the definitions under the Senate, they've got urban, they've got metro, they've got rural feel, but then it's all dictated on population base, okay?
Okay.
And so when you look at the US Census Bureau, and they're the ones who dictate how to define things here, the whole Chicago nine-county metro area is urban, and that's by definition. We are fortunate because we have half-acre lots that allow us the feel of a more rural impact, but we do not have ag fields, we do not have farms, we only have 2 lots over 3 acres in the whole city. So, you know, if you wanted to buy a 5 1/4 acre school, a vacant school and park, and set up a farm and have a couple horses and some pigs, that's about the only lot in town.
Or you can move to Chicago where they have 0 restrictions on
But-
poultry.
but
I just to finish, Dan, I just want to say, I think that because of that difficulty and because of the way family life is changing, and to refer to what Randall said, young families do want this increasingly. We do not have a lot of options. If you want to live this life, it was sort of like Prospect Heights or move to the country. You know, I mean, there are some other towns, but otherwise you're talking, okay, I got to give up my job, I got to move, I got to find some other way to raise my family and support everybody. So I would say that while we're moving forward with this, just to keep in mind that, like, you know, if we have to put limits and rules into place, okay, but let's just try and remember that so many of us chose Prospect Heights because it's different, because it did afford us an opportunity to live this life, and because it works for most of us. It works not just for us, but for our neighbors too. So I think if we can keep in mind that, like, this is a haven, we're different, let's celebrate that. We don't need to try to become like, you know, Wheeling, Arlington Heights, whatever, which, by the way, they're all undergoing their own legalization discussions as we speak. But yeah, I think it would just be, I totally feel for people who are having heartburn because of neighbors who are keeping chickens, and it sounds like lots of other things inappropriately, but most of us are not like that. Let's work together to move forward. I think we can come up with numbers that make sense for most people, and you know, we're willing to work with you, we're willing to volunteer, we can help draft materials. I think we can add stuff to the new resident packet as well. I think that would be a good thing to set expectations for keepers and non-keepers alike. But you know, we want to be part of the solution, so let's just try to keep as many of us in the fold as possible.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks so much.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I think one thing we have in common is that we have the good keepers of the chickens here. And we do have to acknowledge that we have some bad chickens.
Sure,
And it
absolutely.
sounds like you were in favor of handling something like that, and it's not fair to the chickens, it's not fair to the neighbors.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's
So
an
would
animal
you,
rights
so would,
abuse. It's-
so would you consider something that would be fair, maybe in the middle, if there was a registration and there was an inspection, and then we could weed out? No one's going to be affected that's a good owner. It's not even going to
Oh, no, I
affect
have
them.
no problem with
But
that.
it would weed out someone who was causing nuances to the neighbors, or even to the chickens, or to whatever it is, the animals.
Absolutely, I have nothing to
I
hide.
think that might be a good compromise where everybody would win. Because
Right.
if you're a good chicken owner, doesn't even affect you, because no one ever said anything, and you keep everything, and there's no smell.
Yeah,
But
I
the
have no
issue is the
problem with
ones
that.
that aren't, and that's the problem. Is that's the difficult part of
And
this.
I want
want you to weed those people out. I absolutely do.
So we do have, so we're all on the same page.
Yes, and it's more like, I think the debate here is like, let's not make the sieve so fine that we're weeding out all the chicken keepers, or we're making it so hard for the good ones that they have to move.
Right.
Because we love Prospect Heights. We're very active in the city. But yeah, if we couldn't live this life, we would have to move. I mean, this is why we're here, and this is how I want to raise my family. But
So if there was a registration and there was an inspection and it weeded out what we all want weeded out,
yes.
and it didn't harm anybody else,
Yes, the only thing I would say is just that we need to be careful about biosecurity.
What does that
so
mean?
the Department of Agriculture, they leave a few days between inspections of chicken farms because they can carry in viruses from one farm to the next. They also wear disinfected boots, disinfected clothing, that sort of thing. So I would just say if there are going to be inspections, just to do your due diligence about, maybe consult with somebody at the Department of Ag or maybe with you since you know how this works. But just to be, because you have to be very careful so you're not spreading infection.
I mean,
So.
also even the location of the coop, things like that
Those are
where
already
no
on
one.
the books, and we're in compliance with that. The chicken keepers I know personally are in compliance with that. But yes, absolutely. As far as grandfathering, I do think. At one time we were entertaining building something else for the chickens. We did call the city, and we actually did receive similar comment to what you said, but what they had said is if you're not pouring concrete, it doesn't need a permit. So it sounds like people
Someone didn't read their book.
So I don't want to get anyone in trouble. Maybe this person's done,
I will tell you that regime is long gone.
Okay. So, but
page that you were talking about making though would be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I will say, so like if you are going to change the laws and require people to be in compliance or get into compliance, if we could just extend grace to people, who need time or planning or support to help move things if they're not in compliance or to get things approved after the fact, if they are in compliance and it's just not permitted or whatever it is, just to keep in mind that's an issue. Also, if you're going to limit the number of chickens, if you're going to use something really low, you're going to have a lot of people who have way more chickens and they are not going to be willing to get rid of them. I'm just telling you,
So I'm hearing two things.
Okay.
I'm hearing if numbers are established and new people coming in, that should be the expectation. Okay?
Okay.
In terms of all the code requirements and all the things, whether it's accessory structures, whether it's size of runs, whether it's location of the properties, even the number to be supported on that lot based on the amount of supporting structures you can have for that.
Right.
Okay? So you have one category that is new people coming in, so the expectation is set from the start.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I'm hearing is that as a general rule and whole, you all want to comply. You just want to make sure that if there are situations that are non-compliant, that there's enough leeway and workability so you're not all of a sudden becoming violators.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a fair assessment? Yeah. I just want to make sure I'm hearing.
Yeah, like I don't want to go from law-abiding citizen one day to
Felon.
criminal the next. And I think I'm fairly handy, but if I had to move something on my property, which I won't, but it sounds like some of you might, it might take some time, it might take some money, that sort of thing. Okay. But I guess what I'm saying is if we're talking about the number of chickens, if that's set at something like 1 per 1,000 square feet, I know of many people who would be in violation there, and people are a lot more willing to spend money to move their coops and stuff than they are to get rid of birds. So it might have to be a case-by-case thing, and I know that's a lot of work, but again, Poultry Advisory Board, something like that.
And that's a great suggestion. I don't know how it would be implemented or how the structure would look, but
Sure.
The idea is a support network for some of those other people to come to.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, as the code official, today I could not tell you how many chickens we have in Prospect Heights. There's no way to assess that. And I think that's part of the problem is one, and then how do you know what people have, what they don't have, and how do we help them become compliant in their efforts to be compliant?
Right. Well, I think that's why this is like, it has to be an ongoing collaboration. I don't think it can be like a one and done.
Okay.
You know.
Jim, did you have your, and then I know this.
It's okay. Just on the
Yeah, I need you to come up to the microphone, thank you.
Okay.
She has to hear you for the minutes.
I know. Just to get into the number of chickens. Now, I know you said you got a lot of people that have a lot more than 1 per 1,000 square feet. If you make an ordinance that says we have to have X, you're going to have X amount of chickens, whatever that's X is going to be. Grandfather, let's say she's got 50 chickens.
13.
13 chickens. Let's say, okay, she's got 13 chickens. You set the number at 10. Okay? I'm just using it as a number.
It's a number.
11, 12, and 13 die off for any reason, she can't add to it. She has to be at the 10.
I don't know if that's, how do you regulate that?
No,
I don't know, it's
well,
just-
here's, and I think where Jim's getting, because if you set a standard, and once that nonconformity has gone away,
Yeah.
they know what the expectation is.
Right, they
And
know
I
that they
think
can't-
that's the biggest issue that I'm hearing from both sides.
Yeah.
The residents that are non-sport, not necessarily that they are against chickens, it's just they need to understand what the rules are as well.
Correct.
And people that are good keepers, and I like that phrase,
Yeah.
good keepers, need to know what the expectations are and know what the rules are.
Yeah,
Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's all I had to say. I mean, I'm just trying to say, if we get everybody, you grandfather the people that have the most, but as they die off, you can't replace them. Well, I know it's not gonna be enforceable, but they know the rules, and.
And part of it is an educational process.
Right, and it's also gonna be the honor system.
Yeah, I hear that, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say
So anybody else? And
Yeah, I don't want to
Maria?
take time from, yeah.
What is the average life of a chicken?
Yes, me
10
first.
years.
I think
10?
we need to host our own symposium on
I want to keep them here all night.
All right, so basically, I feel like we're all on the same page. Us chicken people, if you want to call us. I mean, we really are. We're not trying to argue. I think the first meeting came out harsh and emotional because all we heard was like, we're banning chickens. Is like, I think that was our first, fight, and I think that's why we came very hot-headed, and maybe let people believe that you couldn't talk, and I apologize for that. But it was heartbreaking for us too. I mean, they're like our kids, like at least for me.
Yeah,
So
but remember, you only can have.
yes. I got rid of a few kids now. So I totally understand. But my point is, we all want to be on the same page. Here's my issue: as you guys are talking, and I'm sitting there listening, is it sucks because these people are still going to have this issue, whether you make 1,000 ordinances or not. So what can we do? And I agree. If we want to start a group, I started a Facebook chicken group just for Prospect Heights residents, so we can communicate. I mean, I want to help them because I don't agree with that, and I think we're all on the same page with that. And it's, even if you make the rule like, oh, we're going to do inspections, we're going to do this. Well, guess what? Do you really think that house that they're complaining about and that house she's complaining about are going to actually tell you that they have chickens and let you come over? I think the way it sounds is they're probably the ones not reporting that they even have a dog.
But I'll report they have chickens.
Well,
But you know what I mean? So that's my issue, is how can we get everybody to report things? I mean, I don't know,
That's the hard thing
And
about
it seems
human
we're being
nature.
like punished because they have these horrible, I bet if you lived next door to me, you wouldn't have an issue. I promise. Come over, I just don't know how to make so everybody's happy. 'Cause I would not want to live like that.
I think one of the things that has to be looked at, and I read a couple of things that actually talk about the ability for a body, whether it's the PZBA or another committee that may be established, where if you have that problem owner, you just pull their registration.
Yeah.
That was in a couple of ordinances, not many.
Yeah.
And it was basically the 3-strike rule. You got 3 complaints, you're done. You got 15 days to dismantle your coop. You have to have your flock gone.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then it's monetary, okay? Right now, we don't have any of that.
I know.
And is that to me, the possible big sledgehammer to solve the problem, it may be.
And if they're breaking like those kind of rules, what else are they breaking? Like, do they have other animals? Do they have goats? Do they have pigs? I mean, you know, see, that's a big issue.
So, you know, and during COVID, I had more requests for quote-unquote miniature swine,
Oh, yeah.
pygmy swine.
It does
There's
say in the
no
handbook,
such-
no grease pigs. I do
There's
remember
no
reading that.
such thing. Okay? So, again, and a lot of things, and I think I stated this last time, a lot of people got into this, and didn't know what the responsibilities were.
Yes, and that's another thing, I was just talking to Nikki, right? Yes. I was talking about, when we were talking about, you know, the work that goes into it too, and the number of chickens, is if you Google like the correct care of chickens too, that will be a deciding factor too. Like when I got more chickens, I had to get another coop to house because every hen needs so many nesting boxes to lay their eggs in. You can't have, you know, one crate and say all 20 hens use that crate. So there's a lot that goes into it. So if we are gonna like limit numbers, it also has to be based on if that person has the correct amount of nesting boxes, if that person has enough food and water in that coop and the correct square footage in the coop for them too. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it with numbers.
So there's multiple levels, and then again, what it's telling me is a lot of towns got real, let's just take a minimum so we don't
Because it
have to
was
think
simple to
about
do
it.
the math, yep. Yeah.
You have this, you have
This
so
size
many
coop with
boxes for
6
this many
chickens.
laying hens. So I agree with you,
Yeah.
there's not science, and
Yeah.
Genevieve said that side of it. But there's also no science coming from up on top, you
Yeah.
know, to help guide this. So we're gonna have to work together to come to those standards, so.
At an average chicken coop, let's say 200 square feet, how many chickens can you house?
You know, depends.
No, what do you, like, you have,
How many chickens?
no, should, how many in a 200, how many,
I'm so
how many
bad
square
at
feet per chicken do you need in
I
a,
mean, I
should,
can show you my,
Yeah,
But yeah. yeah.
Then the other issue is who has the ones with the miniatures?
Yeah, and see,
And then-
I have Sophie's, it also, like, I could have like 20 chickens in the place of 10 regular sized chickens, if that makes
And
sense.
there's some others that are larger.
So there's-
I'm not
Or
gonna
like
sit there and
whales, you
dictate
know?
what.
I don't know. if any of these whales-
be easily.
It's hard. But
So-
I think the main thing that like I realized is now, you know, I'm like, oh, people just don't like roosters. But now like after hearing, like you just told me you would allow me to live next to you with my roosters as long as they weren't waking you every single day and doing the other stuff. So I really want to find out like these houses that are started this whole riot, like what is going on at these houses and why are they, like why, I want to go and see I want to see where they live and why their animals are being treated like that. And they seem like they have more bigger issues
Oh,
too than just roosters.
And it's not just that one. There are a few that are
I know,
habituals,
but I'm
and
just
there's some
saying, I
that are
think
obvious.
we need to help these people because if that was me, I wouldn't,
So,
you know.
so the summer, because we do
You
have
don't
to
want to
kind
pull
of
an all-nighter? I'm ready.
So could we, go ahead.
Right. Just a couple things. I think governance is a process, and I think that we don't need to think of this as like the last absolute rule for Prospect Heights. Like, I think the fairest approach for everybody is to try the least restrictive approach and see if the registration and maybe working with some of the coop problems to get them further back into the yard, maybe that solves a lot of the rooster problem, and then revisit it in a couple of years. If her neighbor's coop isn't right underneath her window, maybe the rooster won't be so bothersome. And if we send some letters to some residents where we're getting complaints, honestly, if you have a rooster you love, but he always coops at 4 in the morning, take him into your basement and bring him back out in the morning. Like, there are solutions for people. So I would say, I don't think we should think of this as like the last absolute rule. It should be a bit of a collaborative process where we work on it and then in a couple of years revisit it after some of the restrictions are put into place and then see if maybe we need a little bit more. Because I think honestly, we might not.
So and thank you for that segue, because all the ordinances within the city are meant to be massaged and flexible. It's just they usually don't happen until an issue is raised or a citizen wants to do something that's not there and they initiate it, or it's necessary to meet a mandated higher law ordinance. And because an issue hadn't been raised, this has been on the books for almost 50 years, okay? It has become an issue now, and I agree with you. And if something's not working, it can always be tweaked. We've got a process, a board set up in our codes to do that. So just let you know, it's not an absolute, but
Okay.
we have to start somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, the other thing is, it sounds, we've come back a lot to this 1,000 square feet thing for the square footage for ancillary buildings. Is there flexibility there for coops? Because it sounds like the rule wasn't written with coops in mind. So maybe.
It comes to lot coverage. And the reason lot coverage is important is we're the bottom of the bowl to the river, and we have a lot of overland water issues. Over 1,100 properties in this town have flood insurance. Okay, that's a significant number for a town with 3,800 properties.
Sure.
Okay, it has very little to do with the other usages. It's strictly a lot coverage and percentage of green space to accommodate the overland floors. We don't have a storm sewer system. We have a lot of depressional low areas. We have swales. So any structures and coverage within that green space above your primary structure has to be regulated. And even your primary structure is regulated on size because of that stormwater. So when it comes to 1,000 square feet, the city's zoning ordinance requires a lot coverage of not more than 25%. So if you have a 20,000 square foot lot, you can have 4,000 square feet of coverage. It's a mathematical geometric problem, and that's all it is.
So you can have more square footage of ancillary buildings if you have a bigger lot?
Correct.
okay.
Once you get to 30,000 square feet, it's in quarter acre increments above that.
Okay.
Maxed out at 1 acre because we
Got it.
don't have anything more than 1 acre right now. So whoever had the suggestion of a graduated scale in the interview for larger lots makes a lot of sense, okay? But we first, and that's why I think I was telling you, from a staff perspective, and we go to a lot, and someone's already got 700 or 800 square feet of accessory structures, their lot can't have any more birds. Regardless, or hence chickens, regardless of what they want, it's just that's what the ordinance says because of the lot coverage requirements that's been set to solve other issues, which are grander issues. Okay, so I wish it was as easy as just 20 here, or this, every lot at 20,000 square feet could handle. When I was talking about the 1,000 square foot, I was saying if in the right conditions, that could be a number, okay? And that's taken into account, it's all in the rear yard. So you're basically putting 20 chickens in 10,000 square feet, okay? So that's the struggle here, is hearing what the keepers want, hearing what the code, looking at what the code requires just for other issues, and then trying to find a happy balance. And then address the issues, and hopefully, I think one of the biggest things I heard is that there's a support network that internally that can help maybe solve other keeper issues. I think that's a huge issue that came out of tonight. But from an administrative zoning enforcement perspective, even though we put a number, arbitrary right now, 20, when we do our registration and inspection of your lot, you may be down to 6, because that's what your lot can support. Okay? And I just think that's gonna be part of the equation, because we have to look at all those other factors.
So, Grace Martinez, 1213 Highland Drive. When we were talking and you said one bird per 1,000 square feet, that's, and a half acre lot would have 20 birds. It's really less than that because of the structure?
But what we were looking at is you have a lot.
Right.
And we have to look at the dimension of that lot. This only has so much area.
Right.
Okay? We'll calculate the total number of the birds because, it was made apparent that actually could
Yeah,
support
we're only
half
using
and
like
back.
half, the
Okay.
half acre.
Okay, but to give you the benefit, we used, I suggested using
Got it, okay,
the
I thought we were like
total
then subtracting that, that's what I was like, wait,
No,
wait,
no,
wait.
no, no. But there is going to have to be a subtraction level at some time based on the conditions of individual lots. Because all as much as you may not think so, every one of those coops that have roof structure counts against lot coverage. Okay, for our stormwater. It's another impervious surface that has to be calculated. So it's gonna be a math, but the right properties, the right situations, I don't see why the backyard couldn't support a larger number. But again, that's part of the problem, because I think we have quite a few, and they're not, there's some out there, and you probably know where they are if you drive around town, where lots have been taken and 100% converted, okay? Outside of, and we saw it this winter, and we've got a list of certain people that are gonna be getting some notices from us about lot coverage. Has nothing to do with chickens and keeping the chickens, it's just what they've done to their lots. And we do that on, regularly. Okay,
Perfect, thank you.
but, yes,
Quick question, because this, sorry. I live in one of the neighborhoods that floods, Tiffany Hinton. Does that take in consideration their patios and their poured concrete as well? He's
Poured-
shaking his head
poured-
yes, because I don't see that being water soluble.
by definition in the zoning code, and according to FEMA, flat surfaces don't create also two potential flood areas, okay? Did I write this? It was, could it be reviewed? And we're in the process of rewriting our zoning code right now. That's a
Okay.
major project we have in the works. But right now, swimming pools don't count towards lot coverage, sports courts don't, because the size of the sport court, supposedly the grass around it will absorb, but those were exempted. So
Okay.
there's, things that have come up over time that were before I got here that I don't, were exempted. So I have to work with the rules in which are on the books.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Would we be able to ask staff to come up with a set of ordinances that we can at least review and work with the community? I mean, as far as how do we proceed from this point on?
Well, that's a great
Wanna let him
question.
finish first?
Go ahead, because he had the
Wait
lead
on the
question.
meat,
Yeah, I wanted to address
We'll probably
the
have to do this when we
about
close.
the meat chickens, and then I think maybe everybody's done, hopefully. This isn't too controversial. So my understanding was there's some, again, Randall Brace, concerns about people raising meat chickens, how many meat chickens made sense.
What's a meat chicken?
It's a chicken to be processed to eat.
Chicken.
Yeah, meat.
I thought
So
you were saying
a
M-E.
broiler chicken that ends up as like a
No, I thought
broiler.
you were saying M-E, not.
Oh, sorry. A chicken, a breed that's meant to be
Okay.
eaten
For
specifically.
food consumption.
So I just wanted to point out a couple of things. There's no way people in this village where we have 400, 500, 600, $700 million homes are raising chickens to sell them at a loss, because there is no possible way to raise chickens at home and sell them at a profit just because of scale. The average price of chicken at the grocery store is $1.90 a pound. I've carefully calculated what it cost me without even considering any capital expense on how to protect them or on the equipment to raise them, just the raw chicken and feed, and it's more than double that just in cost. There's not the reason that we do that. We're doing it for our own consumption, to raise birds that were happy except for the one last minute, right? They weren't unhappy their entire lives. They were happy for a minute, unhappy for a minute potentially, right? So that's why we do it. We're trying to feed our family good, healthy food from animals that were well cared for in a way that's responsible. That's really why we do it. And a couple other things you mentioned, yes, ordering them in a quantity that makes sense at any given time to try to keep some of the costs down individually. Getting less than about 25 at a time is almost impossible. So for example, 50 is a pretty reasonable number in a mobile chicken tractor that can be raised. that 50 chickens, broilers raised, depending on breed, between 8 and 12 weeks start to finish from the day they hatch. So the days that they're out in your yard and not in a brooder with a heat lamp is about 4 to 6 weeks. So to keep in mind how short a term that is outside, these chickens do not reach maturity to the point where they're crowing like roosters. So they don't have the noise issues with roosters. So I just want to keep these issues in mind, that this is a seasonal thing that people are not doing continuously. But 50 chickens, if I raise 50 meat chickens, I would only get around 170 pounds of finished chicken meat. The average family of 4 in America goes through 400 pounds of chicken a year. I could not even meet half of my overall family demand based on the average per capita consumption of chicken in this country. So to keep in mind, I'm not raising so many chickens that I have to sell them. This is purely for my family's consumption.
Question for you. If we were going through a registration process and an inspection process, you would like to see a category for an individual to
Seasonal product, seasonal chicken or seasonal product.
meat consumption. And then the other issue is most of the ordinance says no slaughtering. Most of the other ones are not to have open slaughtering on your property, health sanitation, all kinds of things that go with that. So.
Is that, you said that's a Cook County law?
No, that's on almost every other. Cook County doesn't say anything.
We don't have anything currently on ours.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. It's, you know, most people don't, because I don't think most people have the skill set, knowledge, or experience, or the location to do that.
Right.
Okay.
And I can understand doing it, you know, traumatizing certain neighbors as well. So, you know, having some carve out where either it's not allowed or it's not allowed in plain sight.
Or you said you use a processor.
You can use a processor. I didn't.
Okay.
I had the entire neighborhood over helping, and all the kids were learning anatomy.
Oh,
so they loved it. I mean,
get it.
But by invite only.
Yeah.
I didn't want to traumatize anybody unintentionally.
Understood. I'm just trying to kind of figure out.
Yeah, you can have them processed. There's a place in Crystal Lake. Unfortunately, again, being, you know, pretty suburban, there's not a lot of options here. There's a place in the south side of the city that does it. But, you know, you transport your birds the day of, and you get bags of chicken back.
So we would probably look to you for some guidance if this is a decision, you know, an area we want to go. Because right now, there is absolutely nothing
Sure.
out there related to this, and I know it's out there.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know, for meat consumption chickens, people are probably not using permanent structure because they're moving them around the grass in their yard, or they're letting them free range in their yard and just having somewhere for them protected at night. The same thing with turkeys. I think I said in the last meeting I've raised turkeys. And again, turkeys, until they reach maturity, don't make loud gobbling sound. So there's a very narrow window at the end before you would process a turkey where they would do that. And turkeys are not 4 a.m. gobblers. They're when they're startled, or it's a social action during daylight hours only. So it's way less obtrusive. So again, you know, for animals like turkeys or chickens, or potentially ducks that don't violate the noise ordinance, I understand that's very hard to quantify. I don't envy the position of trying to classify all these things in a way that's both not so draconian and also doesn't take so much of your time to cover every single little thing. I don't envy that at all, but you know, raising turkeys I think is also should be on that seasonal meat production type of thing, because this is not from year to year. You're not living with these on your property where you have to care for them through the winter, which is again a housing issue that you have with chickens, you know, laying hens. So some sort of carve out with that, since you're not dealing potentially with permanent structures, and you're limiting the amount of time.
So what is the time you have when you do these?
So what I was saying was with like the chickens, depending on the breed, 8 to 10, starting any time now. A lot of times people do them in the spring, and then by the time the heat of summer hits, they're already done.
So April to June?
Yeah. So they're, you know, by the time June rolls around, it would be done for if you had chickens like last week or this week. And turkeys are about 4 months, but turkeys need a lot more time indoors and protected and heated because they're much more fragile as poults, as babies. So again.
Rain is very detrimental.
Yeah, before they're feathered out and you know, pretty good size already, they need to be well protected. So even turkeys who take four months to go from start to finish are only really outside for about 2 months.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions I can answer?
After the meeting, can I get your numbers?
Yes,
and stuff?
yeah.
Because this is something that, it was not, it was brought up during you had brought it up at the meeting, that you had had that experience, but then it was brought up by one of the phone interviews. Again, consideration should be thought of if we're gonna go that way. So-
Yes, yeah, thanks. Yeah, Grace let me know that you guys had talked and that I should get in contact with you, so yeah, I appreciate it. I'll stay after and give you my number. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
I just have a quick question. This is Grace Martinez. Considering, I think I saw when you had the rules up there that like young animals don't fall under the limitation, like if a dog had a litter of puppies or a cat had a litter of kittens, would like the meat chickens, because they're processed before they become full maturity, would that fall under the young animal kind of?
Can't answer your question. I don't know enough about it right now, Grace. I really.
No, because I'm thinking maybe we don't need a separate rule and a separate stipulation for meat chickens if they are still considered young and not reading, not.
I think part of the question in my mind comes to because I don't know enough about it, what other ancillary equipment, what other needs does a meat producer need versus a hen layer? I don't know. Okay, and I don't think this is here, but those are some questions that need to be asked, okay? It's just
something that I thought of, thought of when I
and,
saw that.
and
I'm
what,
like, wait a second,
what
that
that's
might fall
mainly
under
done
it.
is understanding that dogs will have litters and then usually by 12 weeks, they're gone.
Right, well, by 8 weeks, they're
Okay,
gone.
but the issue is there's, it still is a use on the property under zoning, and
Yeah.
we don't, it's just trying to figure out.
Sure, just throwing that out there, because if that helps save like another whole rule set, that may be something.
I think it's a checkbox on the registration.
There you go. Yeah, that works too.
In summarizing, I think if I could ask the ZBA to recommend that I start the drafting process, okay, and knowing that, and then present a draft here even before we go to a public hearing for consideration, and maybe, I know we've got some people from one side that I think would be willing to work with this, it sounds, and we've got a core group that could be involved, maybe tweak and help understand, because part of it, I think, educating you on what the things we have to be responsible on, more than just the ordinance related to the birds, and the other things that we have to consider, I think, is important. So, and maybe come back in another, it's not, we've had it for 50 years, I don't think another 60 days, and I will tell you this, we're heading into our construction season, and it's the time of year right now where our permit loads and our plan reviews and inspections are our number one priority, because that's the pays the bills. And so.
Do you need a vote from us to?
Yeah, I would like to have, it doesn't have to be it can be a soft poll, just giving me direction to start drafting an ordinance to present back to you.
How much time do you need?
Let me report back to you in 60 days. I will work as best as I can. I may need a little time depending on construction season.
Okay.
And those, if you still have issues, call us. We will come out there.
Call the police.
And call, the things is please, if you had to call the police for early morning stuff, because we're not here at that time. We come in at 8:30.
Police aren't there either. The non-emergency number doesn't get answered till 8 o'clock.
The problem is you have to call, the way, just another educational point, if you're gonna want to call, you have to call the 911, because it's the only way that it's a documented call.
And they can't send an officer out
Without it.
being dispatched to 911, you have to call 911.
And you tell the 911 officer it's not a life-threatening emergency.
Okay.
okay? And that's, but then what happens is they have their own reporting system, and it doesn't necessarily match us. So as a follow-up, if you've had a number of those calls to the police and that hasn't really gone anywhere, please let us know.
And if they need me to do a complaint, I have no problems doing that.
You want her to let you know when she makes a phone call, so you guys do have an idea?
You can leave me a voicemail, shoot me an email, because what I end up doing is I, or Andrew or Gonzalo or other inspector, one of the first things we do is we check to see what's come in overnight, okay? And then we'll do a check, like, we've had issues of late parties, we've had construction overnight, we've had, you know, other things that shouldn't be going on, and then we, you know, home auto repair businesses, you know.
Drifting in parking lots.
Yeah, so we try and, we'll read through, we'll, if there's a one that's questionable, we'll contact the PD and say, hey, can you have someone send over a report? Or just at least a incident report. It may not be filed as a true report, but just a contact sheet, so we know what happened. That would be helpful.
Dan, those. I had good luck with 911 and a barking dog at a couple doors down. I probably called 4 or 5 times, but they came out, they heard the dog, they went up, they knocked on the door, they got a few tickets, and they addressed it.
When the police officer came, we actually went into our backyard so he could see the chickens, and we did get them to cut their backyard because it was more than 8 inches. But it didn't make noise while he was there, so he couldn't.
John, you had a question?
Just a quick question, on those 911 calls, when people call in to complain, since it's a recorded complaint and the officer has to go out and do a physical, hear it himself, is that call that's documented, recorded, if someone complains, let's say a rooster is crowing, and they record it on that call, on that 911 call, is that a valid, documented?
Oh, you mean if I was in my backyard and they could
No.
pick up the call?
No, because at that point, it's just a call for service to verify if there's a problem, and it's not until it's actually witnessed, because people can call all the time, we get calls all the time about certain activities that aren't happening, whether it's pranks, whether it's because contractors don't like another contractor, or, you know, so until it's actually observed or witnessed.
I mean, that falls under the gag with the video thing, of course.
What are the guidelines for noise? Is there a decibel threshold? Is there a time?
10 p.m. to 7 a.m., so anything after 7 a.m. in the morning, you can pretty much do it, and you're not supposed to disrupt anybody on Sundays.
But is there a decibel requirement?
The Illinois EPA has a standard, a set of standards, but that is so hard to measure and see whether it meets the standards for noise pollution. And that's all they're looking at is this a noise pollution issue? The average test, 3-day test that's required by the EPA is about $6,000. And if the municipalities aren't gonna pay for it. In another municipality, I had a automotive business that was opening their garage doors early on Saturday, and the impact wrenches were going to do work on the cars. And it was right backed up to a residential neighborhood, and there was nothing in the rules about it, because they started work in their legal time frame, you know, and they were following their ordinance approvals, and the residents wanted the city to pay for it. And we couldn't. The village I worked for at the time, we couldn't. So again, and then the EPA wouldn't touch it until you had a certified audiologist do an A and B band test to look at the impact decibel levels and the constant decibel levels to see if it fell within the range for pollution.
Quick question, Dan. Isn't the ordinance like from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for noise?
It's 10 p.m. at night to 7 a.m.
In the morning, we had to be quiet, it's a quiet hour.
COVID caused a lot of problems with people who couldn't go to their gyms, all of a sudden all bought Pelotons and jog treadmills. No, I'm serious, that lived in townhomes, lived in apartments, lived in others, and now you got that thump, 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 thump of them running. And then they expected us to do, well, I'm not at work, call the police. Well, the police go out there, they really have to run it. This is when I get off work. This is when I used to go to the gym. This is when I used to, and so the police weren't gonna ticket them because they're trying to adapt to lifestyle changes. But it's difficult because it is an impactful situation for the person around that's being impacted by that noise. They can't get rest. So, I think.
I think one more question, Carter.
Yep.
I just wanted to end the meeting, well, I really want to go pee, but I just really wanted to end it from me the way you started it. I really appreciated you starting tonight by thanking all of us for coming and hearing us out, and then again today answering our questions and having an open ear, because I think it helps things when we don't, like I say, when we don't feel so defensive, when we can actually be neighbors and talk things out. And I think we learn, I know it was more than, like, for me tonight hearing, oh, I just don't like roosters. Like, we heard why you guys are having issues and we want to help you. So I just appreciate everybody and you guys being here so late. You know, like, you're off tomorrow. No.
None of these guys are off tomorrow.
I would like to second that too. You made me feel comfortable to come back and give it a try. I got very defensive when there were some things going on that were kind of rude that made me very uncomfortable, and I was ready to leave and get out of here. But you made me comfortable that I needed to talk about this, and it's been so long, I don't know that it will ever be resolved, but at least it shows a different side of, oh, we want our chickens, we want our roosters. No, it's more than that. There are other sides, and it's not a neighbor dispute. We used to give each other Christmas presents so it's not a neighbor's dispute like you surmise it is. It's a long-going thing. And you made me feel more comfortable to talk about it, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Going forward, how I've got this, and I don't think we ever came to a resolution. You guys actually gave
They have not voted on it yet.
a thumbs up, a voice.
Yeah, well, so, thank you to the public, thank you for your comments, thank you for everything you've done, it's been great. We need to move forward, so I'd like a motion to recommend that the staff draft an ordinance within 60 days.
And report back to this body.
I'll make that motion.
And at that time, it'll be a workshop again. It's not gonna be anywhere near votable, okay? And again, this has been a long issue. It doesn't have to be solved overnight.
Can I have a second? Do we need a roll call, or can we do a voice call?
They need help first, like.
We'll work.
Not like personal help, but like these.
Do we need a roll call vote or a voice vote?
Roll call,
No,
please.
voice vote is fine. This is a.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Because it's not an
Thank you.
actual ordinance or that. Thank you. And just a note to the ZBA members, if there's some suggestions or issues you would like to see incorporated, please email me direct. Please do not copy all, so we don't violate the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. So to all the,
Thank you very much.
Someone talking about like the whole process.
Well, believe me, I live next door. I live in production area, next to production turkey.
You send boys over to a couple houses.
I understand.
Just 3 seconds, it'll be done.
But thank you, but on a local,
we get the
not a
finish.
production.
So,
All right, so to all the commissioners, if you have comments or if you have suggestions, please email Dan directly and do not copy anybody else. So direct emails to Dan. Emails are preferred over voice calls.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we gotta keep moving because it's late. We've got a new order of business, which is a date change for the April meeting.
All right, this was raised to us by the city council last month. They have a conflict with Passover on their Monday night meeting. So they would like to have it on Wednesday, just for the month of April.
Okay. Okay, so that.
Just one day.
One day.
We go to Thursday?
Yeah, just for one day.
Okay, do we need a vote on it?
Yes, we need a voice vote on, or an actual roll call on that one.
Can I?
Time out. Patrick cannot hear us over the noise, so we need to ask everybody, yes. to
Yeah,
step out there.
we still have a meeting.
So I can hear the minutes. Thank you.
All right, all I want to do is say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We should, can still listen to and.
Oh, yeah, you don't have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stay.
Okay.
Yes.
I just need to be able to hear everything.
No, you don't have to leave. This is the.
Right. This is
where
for
we get
you.
work done.
I know.
We want you here every month.
I can actually stay this time. I didn't leave last time, so.
All right, guys, please have a motion to approve a change for the April meeting from April 24th to April 25th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Oh, yes.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Weigel,
Aye.
Commissioner Mashevsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Patel,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
Aye.
Commissioner DeGraff,
Aye.
and Chairman Kempa.
All right.
Thank you very much. The council will thank you very much for that one.
All right, they owe us one. Do we,
Well, we'll go back, we'll just go back into the regular agenda.
all right, so let's do we had a approval for 208 East Euclid for the construction of their backyard improvements.
The city council voted, accepted their waiver of first reading. They voted unanimously with no questions asked. So thank you guys. You guys did a good job with the public hearing side, so the council had all their information they needed to vote on it at the first chance.
That's nice to hear. Okay.
And we did get a real nice, and I forgot to put it in the packet, but I got a nice voice message from Megan thanking us for.
Oh, we did something good?
Yeah.
Great.
That's the owner of that property,
Yes.
so they thanked us.
All right. All right, communications, we've covered the first one, the second one, we got a new deputy. Clerk.
Yes, Karen Schulteis, the deputy city clerk who's been here for almost 11 years, retired. Her last day was this past Friday. We, and the city, and I was on the interview committee, we've hired a lady by the name of Lisa Busby. Lisa has previous governmental experience in California, Florida, and in Arlington Heights and Barrington, where she's had a clerk-type role, understands freedom of information, agenda stuff, and research. So we welcome Lisa.
When did she start?
She started actually last Thursday to get a couple days with Karen before Karen left. And I think she'll be a great addition to the city, just coming in with a lot of knowledge on how the laws affect open meetings, agendas, freedom of information requests will be very beneficial. She can hit the ground running.
Cool. All right, and that's it on that?
Yep.
Yep, the last item is the Cook County Economic Interest. I know I've received the email, I haven't done it, what's the deadline?
May 1,
Okay,
if you don't do it, the county will fine you, and it's on your nut, not the city's. They take this seriously. There's been some changes to some of the questions, so please read them this time. Don't just blanket all.
I think we've all done it in the years past, so this shouldn't be news to anybody, but it has to get done.
Yeah, by state law, all elected, appointed officials and certain staff who are in supervisory and decision-making positions have to file this with the county every year. And so it's always in March, April with the May deadline, so there should be no reason why we don't get our.
When did that email come out?
It came out
2
last
weeks
week,
ago.
or within the last 2 weeks, and I'm gonna ask the new clerk to resend it.
I don't think I got it.
All right, I'm gonna ask the clerk to resend it.
That I did it.
Yes.
You didn't get it in?
No.
Okay,
I don't think so.
so we'll double check. That's why I'm bringing it up now and not the week before.
Not April 30th.
I actually thought I did it. but I
Hey,
don't know.
Neil,
Yeah.
can I have a motion to adjourn?
No, one
No,
last
we're
thing.
done.
We will be meeting next month. I got an application in today.
Oh, I assumed we did anyway.
So we will be back here on April 25th.
So why don't we just vote it on the meeting? I motion to adjourn.
Second?
Can I ask one quick question?
No.
Oh,
I don't know if it's, I know it's late.
denied.
I'm Mrs. Schumacher. If that coop is by her window, isn't there anything that we could do now?
The issue is because we did not get the call on the coop. When we got the call, it was just a noise, and we couldn't get onto the other person's property. Okay, again, there's a whole issue with, just because she complained, and she's saying where it is, we still have to verify the location. And that particular owner, one of the issues is trying to get there when he's there, or when he's there to answer the door to give us permission to enter his property. Okay, and he's gonna use the same statement. I was told I could have it, nobody told me where I couldn't have it, okay? And I can't penalize them until we give them certain notices, otherwise I'm gonna be chasing every single one. And as much as what was said tonight about what people told, I totally believe it. I've read some of the letters, I've read some of the notes, I've read some of the things on how a previous administration interpreted this. And it came down to they did not want to read the code and apply the code. They just wanted to keep residents happy. Just go ahead and do it, just don't cause a problem. Well, doing that works for a while, but then all of a sudden, when people are not complying with code, problems happen. Those things are in there for a reason, and that's why we're back here. And we will be working. We forced them last year to cut their grass. We forced them to fix their fences.
Okay, so somebody's doing something.
But the hard part is because the way, there's no restrictions on that, so other than camping out, and waiting for something to happen, or getting that in. And then the other issue is, it's only a financial penalty. And the judges have between $50 and $750. We make a recommendation, but depending on what the judge, if he's in a good mood that day, or that he believes that, oh, it'll never happen again, then they'll give us lesser fine. If it's a repeat offender, but then by the time we do the repeat offender, that may be another 2-3 months of problems because of the timing that it takes from getting the citation to getting it in front of a judge is 45 days under a civil. So as much as I'd like to say we can help them in a timely manner, that's with all code violations. That's just not with noise. That's with illegal structures, illegal fences, illegal home occupation. And, I've got one guy who set up an auto dealer in his house. And he had semis dropping cars off.
Nice.
Okay. But it's been very difficult to catch him in the act. And the lady that called, we were all out doing our jobs, and by the time we got the message, semi truck's gone and half the car's gone because he relocated them to other places. So it's a game of cat and mouse. It's a game of catch, and then you write him a ticket. Okay, 45 days later, we may be in court. Or he may just pay the fine and not stop the behavior, then we have to go do it again. So I wish we had a little more stronger powers than we do.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad for her because I know it wants to live like.
Oh, yeah, and they were the ones that chose to speak up. I talked to a number on the phone that they're just done calling me because the behavior hasn't changed. And maybe if we can get a group of people that can help advocate, educate, maybe that'll help. Yeah. At the end of the day, I think we need some tougher ways. What that is.
Anything else? Can I please have a motion to adjourn at 10:13?
I'll make that motion.
Give me a second, come on, Neil.
You already got it.
No, he made the first
Neil
one, I did the
technically
second
was the
one.
first, like, a
That
long
didn't
time
count.
ago.
That didn't count.
I was like at 9:30.
Neil, you're
All
gonna be
those in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Okay.